Okay, meeting recording has started, but we'll give it a couple more minutes because there's always a bunch of stragglers. For anyone that hasn't been here before, I would recommend going into your TeamSpeak settings in Self, Sound Pack, and then Sounds Deactivated for your own sanity, really. And for anyone else that hasn't been here before to any of the meetings, generally, how it works is when someone is reading up a topic, that'll either be me or the person that's presenting it. If you want to just slide right in there once they're done speaking, go ahead. But if you're really eager and you really want to say something, throw a Q in chat like that, and you will be. And I will do my best to keep track of the cues. Speaking of, I should quickly throw something here where I can note them down. But there is definitely a chance that I may miss them as I'm like taking my notes and stuff. So if I miss somebody, feel free to call me out on it. Well, God, everyone getting their tags. I suppose this is the place for it. Right. When it rolls over to the next minute, we'll start. First topic I feel we'll do is Sarge's one discussing the CCE results, which he lovingly took over for Insonatus. So, if you would like to take it away with discussion of the latest CCE results, Sarge, then go ahead.
Sure. Well, so I did throw together those graphics that everybody seemed to love. But let me go ahead and just paste those in members general channel. But I tried to get through kind of the last couple since there hasn't really been much of an update done on after the 10th, I believe it was. So kind of just go down the list and read it, obviously, but for the most part, it kind of shows an idea of where things are, what's been added already, what's already kind of done, and just waiting on the next mod update. And then an outline for the more extensive ones, trying to just, I guess, best explain what the back end process there is, or how much work it really does turn into. Um, One thing I did want to kind of bring up or touch on was I know a lot of times there's a lot of like big additions that have been passed through the CC and kind of sitting in limbo for a while, and I'm sure some people are wondering like how we can get some things done and not these other big ones. And it comes down to this free time and what you're passionate of working on at that point. But there's also a lot of discussion that has to go into some of these where you see an existing mod out there in the workshop already. Like, well, why can't we just use that? And to make it work on Doug, there's a lot more that has to go into it. For example, I'll talk on the that custom grave marker where we wanted it to be something special that you can craft and throw together in different stages and be able to have different attachments to it that may be personal for the player that it's going to be a memorial for. So then we have to think, well, we need to avoid people just coming by and taking that stuff off, just basically griefing it. So what's the alternative? Now you have to have a system that you can kind of quote mourn it, and then it makes the attachments on there locked. You no longer have access to remove it. Well, what if you placed it in the wrong spot or screwed up, did it too soon? Well, now you have to be able to dismantle it. Okay, how do you do that, and so on. So there's a lot that goes into it that we kind of discuss ourselves and worry about before adding anything, but with stuff that we also don't want conversations in the CCE threads getting bogged down on, and a lot of back and forth there too, because there's just each item is just unique on its own sense. So, but I think the little posters there kind of could provide as much insight as I can verbally give here. So if anyone has any questions, I'd be happy to answer. Other than that, though, it's all right there for you to see.
If anyone has any questions, then go ahead, but I've not had a chance to actually dig into those graphics because notes, but the last time they were pulled up, they were quite self-explanatory. If there's nothing else to be said on this, then we can indeed move on to the next one. Oh, go ahead, Flux.
I was gonna say the one about the dynamic survivor house and hunting camp events. I know Karma Crew does that. I think they, that's the only modding team I've seen do stuff like that before. I guess I'm gonna reach out to them and see how they do it. Is probably our best bet because I know it says in the description need to figure out how to make spawn.
Well, I don't, and that was my best guess. It's not really one of those that we've looked into yet or sat down and thought on. I'm kind of in my head. I kind of have an idea how to do it. I don't know if any of the others on the modding team already know or not. It's just a matter of there's other things that we're already working on, and it's only can only do so many at a time.
Yeah. And then I'd say the thermal looks sick as fuck. That looks awesome.
Oh yeah.
That looks insane. Apart from that, I have nothing else to add.
If we're all done with this topic, we can jump over to the next one. Speak now or forever hold your peace. Okay, looking to try and usual stuff. I'm gonna try and rattle out any topics that have their presenters present at the moment. And first on my list is biscuits, and I think biscuits might be here, but I'm not sure what name he's going by these days.
I'm here, but
oh wait, yeah,
I'm like semi AFK right now. Could we come back to it?
yeah, could do. All right.
Alright.
Next topic after that is from Dash. If Dash is here. La DL. No, apparently not. Okay. Next topic after that is from Pain. Is Pain here? Or am I going to be in pain? Oh, wait, I see a Pain in 1994. Might be our savior.
Hello.
Hello.
All right, hello. I didn't know if this was working. I was having issues with it.
We can hear you.
Yeah, yes. So I was just noticing when I first put the suggestion in of just notes, and I know this has been discussed but previously, to my knowledge, of just wandering around the wilderness, seeing a note, and it's just X person was here, Payne was here, Weenie was here, Mufasa was here, just as examples. And it just seems overly excessive. And I know that this was talked about in the last meeting, so I didn't actually prepare to actually talk about anything, but it just seems like the notes could be used so much better for anything else, in my opinion, instead of just bogging the server down with random objects all over the place. I don't know how intensive it is on the server. I don't really know, but I've gone to places before, like I think there was like a place in Northwest Airfield that just had like at one point 4 notes of this person was here. Next to that was this person was here. Then this person was here. And then this person was here. And it just seems like it's too much to me. And that's kind of all I have to say. I didn't really think about any further about this. I've never been to a meeting before.
Curious if staff are able to comment on the effect that notes actually have on server performance, because I mean obviously it's like more objects, more clutter, more strain on the server, but I'm also curious like to what extent, like how bad it is for the server, because I know most of the thing it comes down usually that hits performance comes down to like shelters or shit like that have like inventories.
If there is any performance hit, it is unnoticeable.
Okay.
Noted.
Then I guess maybe it's just more for like an RP point of just, I don't know, maybe notes could just be used better for RP reasons.
Just adding to my notes. Go ahead, Harvey.
Taking on the role of contrarian here, I don't see an issue with them. It's kind of like graffiti tags.
Okay.
I don't know if you ever done 5M or something like that. Scenes are the same kind of thing. There's just scenes everywhere. Yeah, if you find 4 notes together and it all says like so and so is here, well, it's been tagged up, and I think it's getting the appropriate response because you hate seeing graffiti in your neighborhood as well. So if it's not hurting the server too much, I don't see an issue. Maybe if there was a better alternative than a note for it, but nope be noting.
Fair point. Anything anyone else has to say on this? If not, then we can jump ahead to a.
I could jump in on it.
Go ahead. The more the merrier.
My thought process is like, I mean, how frowned upon is it if you see a note that's like, there's a guy in our group that does this. His name is Toenail. He doesn't play anymore, but I have personally burned his notes. Like if I've ran past it like 2 months later and I'm like, holy shit, it's still here, or like it's in a different spot or it's moved a building over. I mean, I'll just take it down and burn it. How frowned upon is it to just take the notes down and burn them?
If you've seen them existing for a stale amount of time or become stale, that you have every right to decide that based on your environment. Harvey made a very good point and kind of referencing it as graffiti. If somebody chooses to spend the time to put something as banal as blank was here on a note and just leave it somewhere, they should expect that somebody else will do something that takes just as little effort and possibly remove it down the line. We really would like to hear this concern, as much as it may seem like it just kind of stays in place and it may come up at different meetings, but it is something we need to hear, because while it is just graffiti and people expressing themselves, sometimes people do take it to an extent where it becomes a meme. And the only way we're going to be aware of that is if it eventually bubbles to the top and somebody says, hey, I ran into 35 Jerome was here notes. And then we have to be like, what the fuck, Jerome? And it turns out it's 10 people doing them, and Jerome's never written a single one of them. So everything can be tracked down to a point where we can decide if it's healthy for the server. But on the face of it, what you guys are asking, absolutely. Like that detritus, that crap building up, blank was here, so and so, it's better for the environment than the alternative.
Thanks.
Yeah, I was also going to make a mention to fucking TEDx notes. Right. Anyone else? But I think that was a rather definitive statement from Solus. So if no one else has anything to say on this, we can jump on to the next topic, and hopefully its presenter will actually no, yes, its presenter is indeed here. Next topic comes from Flux.
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the summer map and how it definitely had its issues. And correct me if my memory is wrong. I think we confirmed it had memory leaks or something. Just said something about that. And for some people, it also just caused servers like performance issues on their part, but it wasn't directly linked because it could have also just been basing. I lived in the Northeast and it was pretty bad there. A lot of complaints from multiple people. And if those memory leak issues are fixed, of course, I'd love to see it come back. It was probably also just one of my favorite times because I was playing the most. I mean, I was on summer break and there was a lot of fun stuff that was happening. I mean, everybody was experiencing the cult story and that was a lot of fun. So I'd love to see it come back. I love the the differences in the map, just how the season actually changes with, I guess, what it is or what it would be in real life. Also, I guess from an admin standpoint of view, can you give any insight to if that is a possibility?
I've done my best to try to quell the rumors of the memory leak issue regarding that mod. That is not an issue with that mod. I'm not sure where that comes from, unfortunately. However, overall, it just seemed like from the usage of it last summer, people were very much against it being there. So it returning for this summer, it's doubtful, but not entirely a no, I suppose, if people are actually wanting it.
I guess then that'd be a CCE suggestion, right?
Yeah, probably. Or it'll be
Alright,
up
I'll
to
make
staff
that
discretion
after
of
the
just
meeting.
making the change. Probably with a wipe prior or with at the same time.
Okay.
I was actually gonna ask, for a change to a map like that, do you need to wipe? I imagine not, because I'm pretty sure you don't actually need to
No.
wipe if you go to like Winter Trinaris, for example. But
All the
yeah.
mod does is retexture existing assets and chooses the game to render those instead of the base game stuff. And the only other difference between the grass is that the grass config has it be slightly higher than vanilla values.
Got it. Just adding everything to. Okay. Anyone else have anything they'd like to say on more on Summer Trinaris? Oh, go ahead, Riker.
Has the mod team, or I guess the map team, debated making their own version of Summer Trinaris? Because, like Flux said, there was complaints about it last year, and it'd have to be a CCE thing. It sounds like at this point for another round of it. But has the map team thought of making their own kind of summer version of Trinaris?
No, that is an impossible amount of work. It's fairly unreasonable, I think, for us to make our own when it already exists and it works.
I figured it'd be a massive amount of work, so I appreciate the answer.
It's important to contextualize like what certain Summer Trinaris is in the ranking of the maps. You have obviously Trinaris that's became Trinaris Plus, and it's been over a decade plus of work from the actual developers. And then they turned it into Winter Trinaris, and before that became V2. That itself was a large team of some of the most famous names you know now from DayZ modding. And they kind of got together and did different things that weren't possible at the time, and they keep one-upping each other, and they create what became Winter Trinaris and got the following it did. And then Lads turned it into Winter V2, and it even got himself hired by Bohemia directly. Compare that with the Summer Trinaris mod, who was made by, I might be just kind of talking down on him, but it's one author, CJ187, and it's just ultimately it itself is an incredible undertaking of work, but it's not going to ever be really close to what our community is seeing and taking from Winter Trinaris, for example. One tiny example from that alone, we have the ability to enable white spray paint when we turn on Winter Trinaris, and we have all the different textures that go along with that. A Summer Trinaris doesn't really give us an additional color or any ability like that on its own. And on top of that, the man who made the mod even replaced the ghillie suit. So the way we've restored the ghillie suit to work, where you can do it multicolor and everything, you can't even do that anymore on Summer Trinaris because he's personally just retextured the ghillie suit as a whole. It's not really open for a project server like ours. It's a one-off thing, and I think like for that reason, it wasn't really as enjoyed as some of our other seasons or our other season that we've done.
Yeah, I get that. I got nothing else to add.
Nothing else to add.
Okay. If people are keen to move on to the next one, then we can move we can move on to John Hand and then 4 asterisks, which gave me a fucking giggle when I saw it. John Hancock, your topic's next.
Sweet. Yeah, no, I was just wondering with the question mark meta and void that you have in that we have in the Discord, is there a way we could maybe add that into the no meta gaming rule, because it seems like it, as of right now, it only kind of captures like spying on people and shit, and like using their streams as no metagaming.
So just to clarify, you want to add some of the stuff that's been, I presume, put onto like Discord commands onto like add
Yes.
it onto the rule as it is on the website for like more clarification sort of thing.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Like the no talking about in-game locations or actions in the Discord specifically.
Oh, yeah, I see.
Wow,
Sarge.
Sarge. He's just posting the password for everyone.
Personally, I'd be against this. The find out in game whole thing is just to encourage people to, hey, instead of talking here, let's figure it out ourselves. But also, I've noticed a bit of people using that term for people who are just genuinely asking a question that should be easily answered in some form. It's a bit strange how we kind of close certain things off for a sense of organicness when at the end of the day, the person probably doesn't even have the time to experience it. They just want to know so they can have a more streamlined experience next time hop in. The last thing I'd want to see is the find out game stuff, an official rule. That to me seems a bit silly in that now suddenly somebody's getting banned for asking a question about something.
Yeah. Definitely wouldn't want it to lead to a ban, so I get that.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I have personally tried to like foig people about shit in the Trinars general, and then like multiple people have like responded with the emoji and did the like meta bullshit in the sorry, in the Discord, just like sending them a reminder. And then I've seen like other members of the community like straight up tell them like 3 lines below. I mean, like, I don't know. What do we think about that? That's just kind of my question.
Ultimately, you're never going to get somebody who opens up their phone to take part in the Discord, and it's the nature of Discord. They're not going to be able to even 3 messages up in every instance see the context of what they're responding to. And we sacrifice that with asynchronous communication just to have basically a live blog where we can all talk to each other at any given point. Desync juxtaposed it pretty clearly. The people that our question mark command has to be used on, whether it's punitive or whether it's a community member actually thinking they should read it as it's written rather than how maybe somebody gave them a heads up personally, like, hey, you need to find that out in game, and instead maybe they should have read how we've got it written in the actual meta command because it's a little more clear. The people that need that done to them aren't necessarily being malicious at any given point. And when we try to emphasize and highlight language in the rules, that's who we're generally combating, is people who are doing something to be against the spirit of the server or the spirit of the rules, or we made it a rule. They, our Discord is OOC, and we say that a lot, and it feels like it does a lot of heavy lifting because it does. It assumes a lot. It assumes that every single member, no matter how popular in the server and no matter how unknown, can handle meta information being presented in the Discord. We don't want to hype it up and make it available to everyone anywhere. But the fact that our Discord is OOC does mean that while it sucks to have your story ruined or somebody say a little bit more than they should, our community comes first. We're there to speak to one another and to answer questions about the game or why the community feels a certain way. And as we bring more people in, we reset how much we've grown towards that goal to 0 every single time. But that's the cost of bringing new people into the community. So it's always going to be messy, kind of correcting people. Hey, that's find out in game. Hey, that's meta. But that has to occur. Like it's never gonna be cleaner than what you've seen playing. Like somebody undoing what you've done 5 messages up saying, hey, come on, man, I just told them they need to go look in game. And it sucks and it's not good, but
It's
it's
not that
better
deep.
than yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Do we feel we have covered this topic in its entirety? Because if so, we can move on to the next one. Speak now or forever hold your peace. And we have two topics from the same person next, who I think is here. From Corvus.
Hey everybody, I see that
Go
we're
ahead.
close to the half-hour mark, so I'm gonna try to be quick. Should I just cover both topics at once?
Might as well.
Okay. So my first suggestion was in a discussion, not the direct vote, but the discussion around the removal of lock hammers. I don't see them really. The purpose for them staying. Personally, I don't really understand why they were there to begin with. I don't know the full history of it because I haven't been on the server long enough. Maybe there's people who've played longer that could give more of their take on it. But compared to the rating that comes with explosives, I see it as, like I've written, low effort, and it doesn't really support the rating etiquette that I think is expected of members of Doug or really people playing on it, period. That's my take, and open to discussion on that. And then I also suggested that we should discuss maybe server-wide or long-form stories, and if there's been a decline of it, why some people may feel that is, and extending it to a possibility of it being due to meta, if people feel like there's issues having these longer-form stories continue because information's getting out and they can't continue the story properly. Whatever the case is, I would love to hear people's thoughts on either of those topics. Floor's open.
Floor is open indeed. Go ahead, Flux.
About the lock hammers, I'll say that, well, one, they're really easy to find, so, and I guess the low effort thing is you're exposed for like those 4-minute cycles, and if it's not like behind a wall or super secure space, you're very like exposed unless you have somebody like, standing there body blocking for you, being a meat shield. There isn't much you can do to defend yourself. And also, to me, it gives a way for like smaller groups or solos to actually be able to raid. And yeah, like just Dylan added, it's very loud and it takes a while to get all the way through a pristine dial. And so I think, yeah, they're very common, and so there's a bit of a surplus, especially for like a larger group. We'll find them like almost all the time. I mean, I've been playing mostly solo for a while, and I've found plenty. And I think if anything, they'd turn down a bit, but I think the removal of them entirely, I wouldn't support that because it allows, again, just smaller groups to have the chance to raid versus finding a full thing of explosive and getting enough like shotgun ammo or just ammo in general to actually raid something.
Okay. Riker is next in queue. However, I did see desync queue, so I'm going to defer to
Go ahead.
him by virtue of staff member.
Yep. Thank you. I brought this up with the staff team, and I was kind of surprised to see a unanimous support for lock hammers and keeping them the way that they are. I think for us as a team, the main issue is more so just the timing of raids. Even if it makes sense for a group in terms of their play time, if your group only plays at 2 in the morning to like 5 in the morning, whatever. But if we see that group raiding during that time as well, it gets a little hard because we have made this push of, hey, make sure you're not raiding outside of your usual times and stuff. But if that's also your usual time, that's a problem in and of itself. Overall, bases and raiding just suck in DayZ, and we've had to make several changes across the board to make it. I don't even know what a good word for it would be, but as far as I think we're concerned, lock hammers are fairly effective as they are, more so because they prolong the time the raiders are present. Sure, it can be loud, but loud also equals quick, especially with our groups who take the entire amount of time they play storing up all the ammunition, all the explosives they need, and they're in and out within less than 30 minutes. In comparison to maybe wanting to take a slightly more silent approach, they're going to be there for several hours. And anybody can more likely catch a whiff of them, if that makes sense, and respond accordingly if they choose to do so. It's more risk involved, and we think it kind of answers that one aspect to rating besides the BI's choices. We already know that stuff like explosives are hit or miss even still, and we're just kind of at the mercy of BI to fix that if they ever choose to do so. That's pretty much all I got.
Right. Riker is next in queue, followed by Plank.
I think lockhammers provide, like Desync was saying, a way to prolong raiders being out of sight. But it also helps loot move in my mind, because if we remove lockhammers, you're limiting it to just claymores and plastics. And those are extremely rare. They're extremely, I don't want to say deadly, but somebody just put in chat the splash damage from them. I mean, I've seen bases after like, either we've raided them in Eclipse or Nova Aurora, or if we've been raided with explosives where entire shelters and stuff are gone and people start bitching. I mean, my group's guilty of it. We've done it in the past where we're like, oh, all of our tents got ruined, and it's just, it leads to tickets. But with lock hammers, I feel like you give a low source of rating that potentially can help a group get off their feet. It's an easy way for a group to find a lock hammer and be like, oh, I found this one gate base. Let me go crack it open. And it's going to promote crackhead play. That's something that's always going to happen. But I know some people haven't been around as long as I have. We've gone through cycles on Doug where we say basing's too powerful and rating's too powerful. I think Desync and them have done a phenomenal job of balancing it to the best that they can. Bases suck. And I think if we just take away lock hammers, we're just promoting what some people would claim as more basing with less raids going on.
Plank is next in queue.
I think the biggest thing for me and my group is the surplus of lock hammers. Like there has been multiple times where we don't even know like what to do with them, and like like I almost want to just like burn them because we have too many of them. I don't think lock hammers are the problem. I think it's the amount that spawn, especially when we have these, like if I don't know, I feel like we're kind of heading into like a longer wipe, and like obviously loot's going to stack. It's going to like there's nowhere for loot to go. So I feel like it's not really lock hammers. Like I think lock hammers are great. I think they're fine. I totally agree with like prolonging people at the raid and stuff like that. I just don't get, like Flux said, like he's solo and he has found plenty of lock hammers. And especially with like, you know, kind of like the rule of how many like 4 dials people can have. I feel like it's 10 times harder to get a 4 dial than it is to get a lock hammer. And I think that's where the problem kind of stems from. I don't know, but that's my 2 cents.
Corvus is next in queue, then the floor is open.
I think I'm more towards Plank's direction on what he's saying about at least limiting the amount that they spawn. I think there's just so many of them. And I think with raiding, there should be a cost. Splash damage and, you know, using the explosives, the risks of using them, there's still things that balance them out from lock hammers, obviously being the more direct, silent, but longer time-consuming approach. I think with raiding with explosives, you kind of accept the loss, but with lock hammers, it's all about the loot. And I'm not sure if that's really what the focus of raiding should be entirely. Because if you're just raiding for the sake of loot, it kind of brings about behavior that I don't think is fair to the people who have to spend a week to rebuild because they had what they needed, and that just got kind of leveled, if that makes sense.
Solus is next in queue.
Kind of addressing Matt's question, or the general sense of how common they are. Say it's obviously the position I hold when I do RP. It's a spot where people bring us stuff nonstop, and it's a slightly valuable item. So, my perspective, they stack up quite dramatically, and that even includes ones that we find naturally with our group. I think it's valuable for maybe a one-off solo to be able to find them as popular as they are and decide to hit someone maybe they couldn't hit naturally, or hey, we've talked about how valuable they are as a raid tool, and that's fine. But my concern is it kind of paints us into a corner at the trade post. It's funny how they stack up for us, because if you show up with one, if we don't buy it from you for whatever, now I've got some stranger outside the front of my base with a fucking lock hammer. And so it's kind of a sense where they get offloaded to the point where we actively burn a lot of them. And I phrase it to my group as like an RP sense, like we are literally taking raid materials out of the world. Like we're protecting ourselves, and we're protecting, or by buying them from people, like nuclear proliferation. Obviously, if we're just letting infinite people travel around with lock hammers, we would buy them as a whole and try to get rid of them. And
Really
then they
quick,
just spawn more.
I wanted to make mention that slingshots spawn more than raid hammers. I'm looking at the types XML right now.
Do they have the same amount of unique locations?
It's comparable.
Just to be fair, I found way more lock hammers than I don't think I've ever found a slingshot on Doug.
Just to wrap up the last of my time there, say that's very important to look at the hard numbers, but maybe it's also got a kind of contextualizes my point there too. It always feels like the opportunity cost of leaving one behind you is higher up. Unfortunately, yes, that really results in hoarding. That's such an innocent start to the exact hoarding issue that is so prolific across everything we do. But yeah, say as a one vote, as a one thumbs up, thumb down, I think they're slightly too common. And that's obviously a result of how we play the game up in our area too.
We can probably look to changing some of the locations where they spawn. I think that will probably be what will fix this issue. I'll talk with Diesel and we'll see what we can do about it, guys. Thank you for bringing it to our attention.
Now, a couple of those slingshot spawns.
Check schools. That's the best I will tell you. That's one place you might find them.
I always find them. I won't say where though.
That point about the whole opportunity cost of like leaving it is definitely very apt. It's like we very often have discussions about like how prolific or how common like your high value, like high tier guns like FALs and shit and plate carriers, armor in general gets late white, but it really is just because if there's a fight going on and people are gonna try and save the plate carrier, they're gonna try and go laden, like someone's carrying like wearing a plate carrier and another one and is also carrying one in their hands because of how valuable they are either for trading or for using them themselves. So it is definitely one of those. It's like you see a lock hammer, you're like, oh shit, I don't think I can really leave this. Harder to justify than passing up a slingshot for sure. But anyway, onto the, I guess, moving on to the next topic that Corvus had also talked about before. If no one else has anything to say on this one about lock hammers, it feels like that point from Desync about tinkering about with their spawns is a good capper to end it off on. So next topic on server-wide stories as a little reminder of what that was. If anyone has anything else they'd like to say on this. I do think that the point that Corvus made when they were introducing the topic of is it because of meta is also an interesting point to harp on, because it does seem like there's more streamers and more Doug players that are streaming these days. So I feel like meta might even feel like it's more prevalent with all that going on. I'm curious what people think of it. Excellent solution, Matt. 10 out of 10. Dropping a nuke on the Doug Reddit as we speak.
But yeah, I really posted that just for content creators. If there's anybody that has opinions on it, or if they disagree with the notion, or that there's any concern, feel free to speak on it.
Go ahead, Deep India.
Hey, sorry about that. Yeah, so I like to stream. I'm not successful or anything. I just like to gather content with people I interact with, uh, immerse myself in the stories that I, come across, and I kind of just accept the fact that meta is going to be a thing, and you kind of have to just get over that because if you are broadcasting yourself, you can't really control what people do outside. It's almost like an impossible rule to enforce. And so if you just kind of focus on what you're creating anyway, it doesn't really matter. You just kind of like treat it like improv. You're gonna just bounce off of what happens anyway, right? Yeah. So I don't know. There's no really a point in trying to enforce something about meta when it's kind of a mute point where you can't really do anything about it anyway. There's solutions that I come up with, like I tell people, like, hey, I got voices in my head, or I don't touch code locks to doors. I don't go into major loot rooms. Like if you're making content, you just have to kind of discern what you're willing to share, right? And then if you share something too much, well, then, accept that you might lose those things, right? But if you're making content, you're probably focused on the story anyway. So it really shouldn't matter that much. And that's kind of all I have to say about it.
Okay, since Zara and Sarge are in queue and they are the staff, I will defer to them and then we'll circle back to Plank. So go ahead, Zara.
Hey, hi everyone. So, on to the point that was made in the chat by Mr. Snoopy Doggy Dog regarding the shoutout channel. Now, I completely understand when people are excited about an interaction they just had and, really want to show their appreciation to who they interacted with. There's been a couple instances where I've actually been requested to remove shoutouts simply because they kind of spoil an in-game plot or have been posted super recently. So I would just like to give a little reminder to folks to, be a little more general in there, be a little more vague. Just say their names, that you had a great time. There's no need to go over like the specific events because, well, the people were there and experienced them. That's just my little piece for that. So go ahead, Sarge.
Well said. One other thing I was just going to mention, at least too, is in my experience, I've had plenty of times where I was, suspecting that something may have been meta based on something that happens. But one thing I think a lot of people forget is in DayZ how the game itself works. The most improbable things continuously do happen. So as impossible as something happening sounds, our brain is wired to first be suspicious of it and remind people, hey, if you are suspicious too, it doesn't hurt just to reach out to the other party and just sit down and chat real quick. I've had plenty of instances where it's like, oh, okay, well that makes perfect sense. Wow, what an absolute coincidence, rather than you're doing something malicious and not talking about it, and then you're now thinking that they're doing something malicious to you, and it just becomes a little back and forth, spite. So one thing to keep in mind.
Plank is next in queue.
All right. I think I kind of I lost my train of thought a bit, but I'm kind of just pointing out to everyone that like as an official group or a faction, like I am totally open to like all forms of long-term role play or any type of story that anyone wants to push. And I think that goes for everyone. Like we're playing Doug, we're not playing we're not playing DayZ. We're not here to just shoot and kill each other. And I don't know. That's kind of my point. Just that, you know, I think that people think subconsciously like, oh, maybe they might, oh, like they wouldn't want to push a story or, when I don't know. Maybe I'm just in my own thoughts, but
Corvus is next in queue.
Hey, so I think important thing that Zara brought up, maybe something should be said where shoutouts should be kept strictly out of character. Of course we could still at people and stuff, but like try like to avoid having to delete people's shoutouts because everybody wants to congratulate someone when they had an awesome interaction with them. But try to limit how much information that was had in game shared in those shoutouts would be a huge help for people who are trying to keep things covert and develop stories over time. But also, like, I think there's also a note too that we should consider how it may stifle creativity if people are constantly concerned with meta. So of course you don't want to be streaming your base codes, right? You don't want to be showing your inventories full of M4s. But, you know, maybe there's something that's really interesting that at this current moment someone might want to know about out of character because they're interested in the story that that person's working on, and they don't care to express it as information that they knew in game, but there are people who might, and I don't think that that should be something that steers people creatively. Is the concern that someone's going to use this information in game and get away with it, frankly. The rule is a rule for a reason.
Okay, Shady Grove is next.
Oh yeah, this is my first meeting, so if I stumble, bear with me. But yeah, the long-term story thing, I see meta less as an issue. Obviously, it is an issue, but I see more of an issue with people maybe disengaging or trying to avoid taking part in a story when they realize maybe that they're the heavy in the story, as in somebody who's more likely to go down. Maybe when, you know, they're surrounded on all sides or something like that. They make a concerted effort out of character to avoid taking part in it, because they want to avoid consequence or keep their character alive or what have you. I think that's more of an issue than meta is as far as long-term story. I try to push long-term story all the time, and that seems to be the biggest issue for me personally.
There have definitely been some situations on Doug where like a story hasn't went a group's way, and it seems like they've kind of lost their willingness to partake after that. So
Right, yeah,
I
like
definitely
changing the gameplay and playstyle drastically, you know, for no in-character reason, more of an out-of-character reason that the story is coming down on them, or just not playing entirely, like, you know, changing their playtime. Like, usually they're on all the time, but when this story comes down on them, they play way less, noticeably way less, you know, or try to pretend the story isn't happening entirely, honestly.
Right. Anyone else have anything they'd like to say on this topic?
I think I'd like to make a point that kind of what Corvus was touching on there. Meta intentionally, obviously, is going to be something we'll always police, and we've made our position very clear on. But there's always going to be an element of soft meta that moves through the community that kind of lets other groups of individuals know to what level that you'll maybe even take a story in character, or where you'll draw the line. Like, you need to know who your theater partner is. You need to know who's on the other side. Say when people are sharing information back and forth, or they've got information on the Reddit, it's common for even one group to decide that, well, we'll take some part of the Reddit IC, but we won't take this part IC. There's been public arguments within a single group in the Discord before. As a really good example, like 3 years ago, 2 Carnival members were upset at about how somebody was sharing IC information through Reddit stories, essentially, like creating things that are IC solely because they got written down in a story. And to a point, that's fine, because obviously they're putting stuff in, they're putting their own flavor on it and their perspective from their character and making it something that they can do. And one member in this argument is saying that, well, they'll never take that IC. Like, I don't care. How can my character know that? And then another member of the carnival in this instance is very clear, like, well, you fucking idiot, I'll take it IC. I'll say I've read a note somewhere and I'll simply tell you, so you'll have heard it from my character. Like, you have to be able to trust the people you're putting on these scenes with. If you want to be in the dark for 80% of what you share and RP with people, do that and make it clear to the people that you share a group with. But otherwise, as adults and people that are still doing role play, despite the fact that we've grown up and we love creativity and we like the escape, we have to know that these things that are meta we're going to come across them, but we have to be able to disregard them. Even if we know
Right.
them, we choose to play the game anyway because we're getting something else out of it. We're not getting the fact that we had a giant reveal on somebody. Like, that's cool and that's the climax of some stories, but that's not the day to day of what we're trying to do with each other. And that would be all I'd want to say for server wide stories is there's always that give and take. Like, if you aim for your story to be server wide, what you're honestly doing in some cases is you're pre-writing it before the rest of the community can put their part into it.
Go ahead, Corvus.
Just to wrap it up, you're right. There should be some soft meta, because if it's going to be a server-wide story, the entire server should get a chance to be a part of it. There should be some form of way that people know about it. And I think most people probably agree that there's the right way and wrong way to use that information in game. So at least it seems like most people agree on it. I think we're good to close both those topics, though. Thank you for your time.
Yep. All right. We have we have kind of two topics that I've like slammed together, because there was like two topics in the channel and one was a continuation off of another one. So these topics are from Devon and Dallas. And I don't know if they're here.
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, nice. Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I basically said like exactly what I wanted to say in my post in the community meetings channel, but basically I've just noticed as a smaller, newer group that's basically just a glorified duo at the moment. I've noticed an increase in larger groups just raiding and destroying us at like the very first signs of conflict. Like, I'm not calling anyone out. I'm not advocating for any rule changes. I mostly just wanted to make like the group and faction leaders that are here right now aware. Like, it can be very hard for smaller groups that are new and trying to build something in terms of storyline. It could be very difficult to do that when we get into a conflict, and rather than RPing, I come back to my base and see that it's destroyed and blown up for like the third time in a week, and then I need to spend days and days and hours of my time rebuilding. It can be very difficult to get that storyline going when I have to focus on locking my base up, so it's not just wide open to the rest of the world. And same thing with not even raiding, but just KOSing. I think who was it? I think it was Dallas that basically said, like, take this from the victim side as well. Like, I'm perfectly fine playing the victim. Like, if you want to kidnap me, if you want to shoot me, I'm fine doing that, but only to a certain extent. Like, after a while, if just because you're the larger group in this conflict, if I'm the one getting destroyed every time, like, after a while, I'm gonna get fed up with it and I'll just start KOSing if it comes down to it, because I don't want to just be getting killed and murdered all the time.
Conflict escalation is something that has been discussed at a few of these meetings, and like the not just immediately defaulting to raid them the second any kind of anything hostile happens. So it's definitely something that we have talked about quite a bit here.
Do you know what like the general consensus on that has been in the past? Because seeing that it's still occurring, I'm assuming nothing really.
It's always been like the sentiment of like encouraging people to take other routes with their with how they facilitate that conflict. Like, as Riker said, encourage more things like holdups, kidnappings, like more hostile interactions that don't just end up with a "you are dead" screen or coming back to find a hole in your base.
Right. And I just saw Matt, like, if you said if you have a base, you will get raided. I understand that. I've been around Doug for years. I've been part of new groups, old groups, large and small. I get it. You get raided. And I mean, I've participated in more raids than I can count. But it's fine. I have no issue getting raided. It's when it's like the first thing that a group does in a conflict. And if it happens multiple times in a row, that's when it gets kind of annoying.
If it's happening multiple times in a row, be sure to put a ticket in. We can look into it and see if that's actually the case. We've noticed a bit of an increase in newer players, especially solos, or maybe just duos and trios working together and having going on a bit of a raid spree. It's not just major groups doing it the first side, I believe. I could be wrong in your case, but it's just something to note.
For sure, and yeah, I'm sure that happens. This was more of like anecdotal evidence, and I know of other smaller groups like mine that this has happened to. But yeah, in my case, it's been done by larger, well-established groups that raid and just kind of sit outside base with rifles and whatnot and shoot at us. And it's perfectly fine if like that's how the conflict is handled. But if it keeps happening over an extended period of time, like I think I'll be less inclined to engage in that RP, and I'll just go straight to shooting them. And I'm sure I'm not the only one that feels that way.
Okay, I'm going to stress to you, if they are attacking you and raiding you in the frequency you're saying they are, put a ticket in.
I understand.
We have
It's been
removed people
different
before
groups.
for doing similar.
There have been no rule breaks, but yeah.
It sounds like there have been based on what you're describing.
I'm saying it's different. It's different groups. Is what I'm
Respectfully,
saying.
we've covered this multiple times. You don't know objectively if there have been rule breaks because you cannot see the data that we would see. If it's been multiple groups, that's likely true, but if they're sharing members between each other or bolstering each other or doing something else that they shouldn't be doing, you would not be aware of it. So we're trying to caution you to use what's available to you as a ticket. It's always there, and we're in a very good position to make sure there's no backlog. So we can absolutely talk with you about it. So you may have believed that you're in a corner and that it's 3-4 different groups and there is no rule break, but you could be incorrect. So please let us take a look at it and make that message clear to everyone else as well. Even if you feel like you've pissed everyone else off and you're the pariah of the server, it's 4 different groups and you're seeing everyone tell you it's not a rule break, speak with the staff team through a ticket and we can determine what's going on. If it's not a rule break and a group still makes their entire RP nothing but hitting target after target after target, we are going to handle that separately as well. Someone might not get banned, but we're going to make the point clear that their time on the server needs to be spent more productively. Please don't ever feel like you're beat into a corner.
No, fair enough. And I mean, I'll submit a ticket, I guess. But I was more, like I said, I was more just bringing up. I just want to make the group and faction leaders aware that there are other options. And, sometimes even as a big group, it's okay to take a loss and give the little guys a win. That was really the point I wanted to bring up.
That is super fair, and escalation of hostilities has been covered in a couple different meetings. So, I would want to encourage us to continue to look at this topic, but those different examples that get brought up, definitely need looked at more, like holdups or kidnappings, or some people maybe need to hear about how these things have gone off successfully in the past so that they try them as well. Everyone maybe can listen to Vadim talk about how he tried to kidnap the mayor of Severograd and walked his ass right out of town before he got shot. Like, it's not enough to kind of speak towards the behavior that you want as well, but share those good examples.
Next person in queue is Jerry711.
I forgot I had my bad. I'm here. My bad. I think it also comes down to like, okay, even if it's not a rule break, I think we need to be mindful of like end goals. Like if you're raiding somebody into the ground like constantly, it's like what do you want them to do afterwards? Is your end goal to make them quit or something of the sort?
Sarge's staff, so you know the deal. He goes, then I'll get to Corvus and Riker.
Can I step in front of Sarge? Sarge, do you mind?
Go ahead.
Okay, I wanted to make reference to something that happened recently, and we took action against this. There are times when groups and factions themselves simply just take it too far for the sake of bending, like having whoever they're going after bend the knee one way or another. And sometimes it just never works out to the degree that they want it to. So they will continue pressing and pressing and pressing until it's broken. And again, we can't really do much unless we're made aware of this. And here recently, we were made aware of this, and we stepped in how we felt was reasonable. In that, we reached out to those individuals and we said, "Hey, if you're going to keep attacking, we'd rather you go attack elsewhere, or if you happen to find them out in the wild instead of out their known base locations, their regular stomping grounds, they're fair game, of course, because we can't outright just tell you, hey, if you see somebody, you're not allowed to shoot them, period." But we got to know this in some form. Otherwise, this behavior will just keep on going, and that's when you reach this point of just, what can you do?
Yeah, I think that there's not much you can do aside from putting in a ticket when it gets that bad. I do think that, especially groups and even factions, if your first resort to getting in a conflict is raiding, and you just do it constantly, you shoot on sight constantly, and you don't seek out like the other forms of hostile RP you can do, I think we should hold it to more of a higher regard. Like they shouldn't resort to raiding and attacking at the first step.
Next in queue is Corvus.
Yeah, can I make a point still? Don't mind.
Go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
Now, one thing I guess to build on what these things said and what Jerry had brought up earlier too is this is something I've told others in my own group and outside of it too. But at the end of the day, if you're group A and you have group B, and your stories, your RP, everything just like opposite of each other, and it's like it makes sense that you would try to wipe them off the face of Chernarus. At the end of the day, you can't do that. You can't get them to quit. You can't force them to perma. So you can't always go into these conflicts with the expectation of, yeah, I mean, that's our end goal. We're just going to make them no longer exist. So there has to be a little bit more thought put into, I guess, what would we see as a win, or, where's the middle ground? And again, having even conversations with them. If there is just constant just back and forth shooting now, and it's like, are you just trying to make them stop playing? And then it just becomes an out of character back and forth issue at that point rather than any real story or RP. Yeah, this is something to keep in mind, I guess, when you're going to create conflict with another group, is you can't force them to do likely what your in character, what makes sense for your character's goals would actually be. I'll leave it at that.
No, Corvus.
I'm not a group leader, but for speaking for Devin's perspective here, if I got raided 3 times in a week, I would probably take a decent break after that. That's pretty rough. And I would just recommend to him that he should put in a ticket, because even if it's not him who's having offense committed, it could alert the admins to something else that is affecting other players at the end of the day. So even if you're strong enough to brunt the storm of it, maybe for the sake of the community, it's worth putting in that ticket.
Riker's next in queue.
I'll rescind my queue. I think we've pretty well on it.
All right. Eamon's next then.
So on this topic about attacks and raiding getting excessive, if you're feeling like that's the case, you can also reach out to whoever's doing the attacking and raiding, to their gaff reps, and you can request that tensions need to calm down and maybe explore other avenues. I feel there's a lack of it right now in the community, and I was a faction rep for FL for I think it was probably about a year, and I can count on one hand in a year the amount of DMs that I got from groups who had somewhat of an issue with us attacking them too regularly, and there's a recent group at the moment which has resolved really nicely, and RP is happening now, and that could have happened a lot sooner if someone just would have reached out to us. And yeah, it's not happening enough, in my opinion. Like, I'll just continue. Like, we're just logging in and we're just playing the game, and as much as we love RP, we also like shooting people, and that's what we go and do. And if that becomes a problem for someone, then let us know. And we'll chill out a bit. Simple as that.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to say on this topic? That does feel like a pretty good capper. Communication. Communication is key. All right.
We can go back to my my topic as well now if you want.
All right, yeah, we might as well knock out your topic too. Since you are no longer AFK, let's go on to that.
Well, a lot of like what I want discussed is in the topic itself about radios. I guess the reason why I made the topic is because I feel like the radio's a lot different now to when I joined Doug. And in a way, the way it's used can sometimes fast track people into the server way too quick instead of it being like a more organic and natural way to happen, where you're traveling the map, you're learning who the groups are, you're speaking to people in game. I've turned on the radio quite a few times, and I can just I hear people just kind of like info dumping, like some new player on everything and where to go and what to do, and it would be cool if those moments could happen more like face to face in an organic interaction rather than on the radio. But then in the same breath, I feel like the radio still has a big part to play. I don't know. Like, it's hard to find a happy medium with the radio.
There should absolutely be a sense where you're speaking to another stranger in the apocalypse in the world we're sharing, rather than it being somebody just that can't harm you at all, or just another person you talk to in a Discord voice chat. I can see that a lot when it becomes kind of like just an open chat, but that's also needed. So there's elements. All so I wouldn't say for or against, but it's been witnessed.
Corvus is next in queue.
I'm not sure the exact ranges of stuff, and I don't want to say it in a way that would nerf and kind of affect the positive aspects of the radio, where people get to talk to each other from long distances. But it would be cool if the headset itself actually had a shorter range, so people could use it for like shorter distance communication, to have that radio chattering game where someone could stumble upon them if they were close enough. I'm not sure if that's entirely doable, or if that would lead to some concerns, but if anybody has thoughts on that.
Just to clarify, do you mean shorter than 2 kilometers at the moment? Because that is how the headset works at the moment.
It still seems like it's pretty far distance reach. I'm not sure if people feel like it's far enough, or if they have any thoughts on the current ranges of it from people who do use the headsets, but from my experience, it feels like they go pretty far.
Tina is next in queue.
I think lowering the range wouldn't be a terrible idea across like both the headset and the radio. Probably not what you would expect me to say.
Not at all.
But I think it would add like more of an element of danger for using the radio as well, because then now you're on the radio, okay, I can hear this person, they have to be X distance away, whereas right now it's kind of like you could be all the way up north and I could be at the castle and I can still hear you. There's like a longer, more of
I
a
agree with
question
that.
of where they are. So
Eamon's next in queue.
Yeah, just to add to my original points, like the radio years ago used to be, if you heard someone on there, it was like a big moment. It's like, whoa, someone else is on the radio. It was almost like an in-game interaction in a way, and you'd ask who they were and stuff like that. These days, it's kind of hard to do that because it's used so often and by so many people, and there's always someone. It's very hard to have an interaction. There's always someone interrupting or trying to rage bait you, and yeah, it almost feels like way out of character sometimes. I don't know, like maybe I'm not sure, but yeah, just I don't know. I just feel like it's almost like a lobby, I guess. I don't know. It's I know people like doing that though, so it's not that big of a deal, I guess. But maybe there's more of a happy medium that could be reached. Maybe I'm not sure.
I will say on that point, especially with Tina's point too, I agree with the lobby. The feel to it now. It's definitely really upped the usage over the last couple years from when I first joined. Even I can remember how little it was, and maybe that's a item for the CCE to discuss further. Maybe potentially limiting that broadband now, especially with the increased pop and more consistent pop throughout the day. Maybe it's in a better spot now where it can be lowered a bit, create more of a localized conversion. Go ahead, whoever's next.
Ryan is next in queue.
Yeah, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
So yeah, I mean the lobby thing, as far as like, definitely feels like a Call of Duty lobby. Sometimes when you turn on the radio, and I think with the range that it's at now, it gives people less of a reason to move around, because you can literally just turn the radio on and check on your friends. So hey, you guys good over there? Good, we're good. You're good. Cool. All right, turn the radio off, or just waffle on the radio for an hour, which again, it helps in one way to feel the world alive, but I think it prevents people also from moving around and physically going to places when they can just turn the radio on and have a quick conversation, and that's it. So I would be personally in favor of decreasing it significantly, like literally cutting it in half to like 4 to 5 kilometers for your handheld radios. Maybe leave the base radios as they are, whatever, but I think it would definitely help movement of players and movement around the server if you decrease that.
Eamon's next in queue.
Yeah, just to add to what Ryan was saying, that's something I wanted to include in my original point. Because I hear a lot of characters on the radio, and they sound pretty cool, and but I've never seen them. I don't know who they are, where they live, because I've never seen them in game outside of the radio. So I don't know if it's the radio that's causing that, or maybe it's just chance and luck. But yeah, I don't know. Just wanted to add that.
Something that could be worth considering is maybe the radios are being used so frequently because of, well, how much success people have had using them. So it's possible that lowering the range could have a knock-on effect that would reduce the amount that people use them, because it's like, if you turn on the radio, scan through the channels a few times, you're like, oh, well, I guess no one uses this thing, and then you just give up with it. But I still do agree with the lowering the range of radios would be a good thing overall. And it also leads to, as the point, I like the point that Tina brought up of kind of adding to that fear factor of, oh shit, this person's like actually pretty close to me, rather than like, oh well, maybe this person's close to me, maybe they're up in tizzy while I'm in altar or something. Go ahead, Eamon.
I think people just need to try and like people are very big on like aura farming and doing well with their interactions in game, like in character, not on the radio. When you're face to face with somebody, I think people just need to maybe try and aura farm a bit more on the radio. You know, make it a bit more like this mysterious like radio, like who's this, who's that, like not so much of a lobby, because I think the radio is a good thing. Like it's good for new players. You know, they hear a lot going on there, and then maybe like info dumping people, like just be wary of that. Like, you know, don't try not to say too much to a new player. Maybe give them a bit of a lead on something. Yeah, that's it.
There should be a sense where you're trying to get something out of it for yourself. Like the lobby aspect comes not just from people maybe having too much levity, but say everyone is playing their own character as well. So if Solus talks to someone on the radio, I'm saying hi and I might tell someone something, but the goal is I want you to go do something that's going to benefit me in the end. And that's not served by giving you background on 10 different things or 5 different things. I need to present to you what I want you to know and to go off and do. Okay. It's definitely a case where info dumping so much as you're just trying to be super friendly, and you should have like some pause. You're speaking to strangers. That person may be friendly, but you also don't know who else is listening. On and on and on. It's a good topic.
I'm getting a quick little visual thing to show what the current radius is map wide versus my proposal, which is just reduce it to 3 kilometers, which more or less gets you, let's say you're in Starry Sabor, you can hear to the outskirts of Ybor. That's with the handheld transceiver. And I think everybody kind of agrees one way or another. The rest of the stuff is okay as is, especially with the amount of work you have to put into maintaining it, carrying it, etc. Once I put this in, I mean, thumb it up, thumb it down, do whatever you want.
Plank is also next in queue.
I just wanted to bring up field transceivers and like just bring it up on the topic if we're talking about radios and the headsets. And I know that I have personally ran into a handful of them, and I feel like if I have one, it's okay. Like my group doesn't need multiple. And I don't know. I'm just going to touch on that.
Ryan's next in queue.
Yeah, I mean, if we can't necessarily agree on like a distance for the radios, I'm definitely open to making them much more rare. I mean, if you look at it from a timing perspective, I know not everybody thinks in the same way that I do, but technically it's been 10 plus years in the apocalypse, right? You think those sorts of things would be a little bit more uncommon. In general, in the apocalypse, they should be a little bit harder to find, I think. So, in addition to increase or decreasing the distance, I would be open to a decrease in rarity for radios.
There might be a solution to look at where we do a sort of a slow drip solution like has been implemented over time for the barrels, or add the base radio count to like a dynamic event of some specific sort, rather than it being like a dummy run at the start of wipe. How that I really don't know any one group or any couple groups that kind of stock them up. For the past 4 wipes, I think the most we've ever been able to get our hands on is 2. And it's like they're everywhere at the start. I mean, everyone knows how they function. It's a matter of them ending up stuck somewhere, and then they no longer spawn at all. So yes, that either a CCE suggestion, maybe change how the transceivers spawn and are distributed across the map out on wipe, or we can try to work something up like within the team. I think handheld radios are slightly too common, Vadim. Do you turn your turn signal on and don't want us to hear it?
No, I do think that the handhelds are very, very common. I mean, usually as a fresh spawn, I could run into literally any medical or police and find one within 15, 20 minutes of spawning. And I mean, on one hand, it could be good for the newer players to kind of listen and hear something when they first join the server and kind of find a direction to go in. But at the same time, with how radios are used now, for taking that into account, I think making them a little bit rarer would be beneficial.
Yeah, this feels like a good CCE topic. And I think especially if Desync's going to be making like a little visual guide, like this is how far you'll be able to see, like little circle on a map or whatever the hell it's going to look like, that'll be a good place to hash things out farther. Oh, hold on, we have it.
So yeah, I don't know if it's been seen in the past, but 8 kilometers is essentially map wide when you look at the circles.
Yeah, oh my god, yeah, it is.
One thing I should probably press is that we've had major issues for years. Basically just meta on the radio. And that's what killed radios. And another thing I need to really caution here is that anytime we've made a big change to radios, overall it has just killed radios. Or it's made them unusable. And it sounds like we're slowly trudging towards the unusable aspect. My hope is that if we do make any changes, we don't kill communication, even if it is not necessarily major story oriented or it's not everyone's cup of tea. Having people talking is always a plus. I mean, we have people who host radio shows whenever they can hop on as well, and that is a major awesome thing to have. And if we end up losing that one way or another, that would be a major shame in my opinion.
Corvus is next in queue.
And just to try to wrap it up, because I don't want to take up too much time or let other people speak on it at least, but at least if you change the headsets themselves and make that a shorter distance, you maintain the existing functionality. People get to tune into Spud's radio show, but you add a new element to the radio as a short distance tool to communicate without necessarily doing that through a third-party client out of character like through Discord. You still offer the risk of people tapping into that frequency, whether it's a handheld transceiver or a base radio. You just have to be close enough to them to actually pick up your transmission. I think it's a neat added element if it could be shorter.
I do really like the idea of having like the headsets be like a much shorter range type deal, where you've got like you can use the headset if you're like just trying to communicate with like someone over a short distance, like if you're running a squad. Also, Ryan, go ahead.
This is maybe a separate topic in its entirety, and I guess a question directly to the mod team. Is there a way to tie the distance for the radios based on the quality of the battery? Theoretically?
No idea.
There's a static effect that plays, I think if everyone's heard it, like when you're at a really low part of your battery, like when it's nearly fully consumed, you'll notice that your radio acts fucky compared to when you've got a full battery. I think that's just like a mask filter, but
If I'm remembering right, because in the chat, Icky from DC had suggested making like having headsets use their own channels, but from my understanding, at least from prior discussions on when we've talked about changing radios, that's not possible because the way that radios are implemented, if that's still the case. Like you can't add more channels or something like that.
all of those pathways as we understand them are like in engine, like they can't be edited. And there's been people who have made certain things to try to like recreate the radio, basically just turn off Bohemia's radio system and create something of their own, which requires fucking with audio as well. And then they've been threatened with like the kind of circumventing like what Bohemia wants them for their creative vision. So it's, yes, it's very well, or not very well, but pretty much understood that we're not to touch the radio system.
What are you talking about? No, that's not, unfortunately, it's an outdated system. It's super legacy, and nobody has proper documentation on it. And whatever changes are made just unfortunately aren't feasible.
Do we have anything else to say on this topic? Just adding to my notes. Because if not, then we can jump on to our next topic. And I think our next topic that has the host here at the moment is actually from Desync, if you want to take it away, Desync.
Do I need to read all this out, or have people read it themselves?
It's up to you. It could be good to read it out for those that are watching the video thing when it eventually goes up.
So discussion regarding roleplay and when or when not to drop the act. Something I've noticed personally is a bit of behavior bordering on a near sense of elitism when it comes to players interacting with one another, especially new players to the server. And this isn't something that's new either. This is something that's happened for years. And it's also something I've noticed even on other servers and even on other like communities like 5M, Red-M, that sort of thing. And it would be nice to see from some of our veteran or more hardcore individuals to be willing to lower that expectations that they have, mainly when and where it's warranted. Like, let's say, for instance, somebody doesn't know what the keybind is to hand an item to another player. We don't need to do this song and dance when we can just talk to one another and just get the ball rolling again. There's also some complaints I've been seeing from people related to immersion being broken, especially as a result of stuff like that. To me, it's a bit of give and take. It's like we just got to be able to understand that not everyone here is mechanically as sound as other individuals. So we got to extend that hand to them and bring them onto our level in some capacity so we can just keep stuff moving. There's no need to punch somebody down simply because they don't understand something when we can take the time out of our day to tell them. The other issue, it's kind of reactionary, I think, to some of the other community meeting topics, as well as just overall behavior in the Discord. Stagnation, especially towards stories. From my experience being here for nearly a decade, is that major server stories that involve several groups and factions are a rare thing. And when they happen, they usually happen because it's not off the cuff. This is stuff that builds up months, sometimes years over time, with multiple veteran characters that are not just a part of one group, they're out doing their own things as well. Now, when these stories pop up, they can be phenomenal and they can also be extremely toxic. It really depends, and sometimes it can be a mix of both. But overall, I know people love to be a part of these, or at least being able to hear it. Just being knowing that, like, hey, there's something major going on and I can be a part of this. It's not always going to happen. So you need to understand for yourself what is something that you yourself can be doing to not feel this way. And some advice that I have is simply just playing the game. Or if you feel like you need to be doing stuff, literally write yourself down a to-do list in your mind, or just write it down on a piece of paper. Like, hey, I need to go visit this group. Hey, I need to go do this trade. Maybe I should go harvest some resources for if I'm a part of a group and bring this stuff back. At the end of the day, you yourself make the experience, and expecting others to do it for you is what is leaving people in this negative mindset that nothing is happening, in my opinion. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this, but this is just kind of me kind of clearing the air, at least on my own head, of the behavior with it.
Riker is first in queue.
Yeah, sorry. Mostly wanted to talk about the kind of helping new players or like lowering that role play level or like standard that a bunch of us have. I can name, and I hope I don't upset anybody by calling out people here: Blackthorn, Woodsman, Fireflies, Joe Scrub. Like there's a Helping Hand. There's so many groups that do this already. I saw it the other day when we were in game trying to help out one of our members who hadn't figured out what a cloak was or how to use it. Helping Hand just told him, hey, flex your L muscle, or hey, flex this muscle. Like I feel like that's a pretty common thing, and I could be wrong on that. With the large story, that's something that I've seen most notably, like somebody said with Hip's story is massive. It includes so many groups, and it's so hard to coordinate that server wide because it takes so much cooperation from people purely on an in-game basis, because some groups don't like doing out of character meetups or like setups. So you have to spend hours a day, which some people just don't have, or like timelines just don't line up. There's so many factors that go into making these large stories that Hip did it really well. But I think there's a reason we don't see them every week or every other week, or like sometimes it goes months without a server-wide story. I don't think that's anything that the players are doing wrong. I think it takes so much coordination to get that perfect moment for a story that people hear about. Like the Moggy Massacre. I'm sure that took Blackthorn a lot of coordination to get so many people there for that stuff. I don't think it's anything players are doing wrong. It's just hard to get those kinds of stories with 4 or 5 multiple groups server wide. I think the server tries to do it when we can, but some people just don't have hours a day. I know I don't. I say it all the time. I play maybe 2 days a week for maybe 10 hours if I have that. I don't want to spend 5 hours a day trying to coordinate a story with 5 different groups if I just don't have the time for it. I'd love to have these massive stories, and I'm sure every group wants to be a part of one and have their characters known in infamy on the website or on the wiki, but it just takes so much.
Okay, we'll defer to Desync, and then Ryan's next after him.
One thing I wanted to make note is we're kind of pushing out right now faction reviews and overall just reviews of a couple other folks. And one thing that's been made note of is we're hoping it's not necessarily a hard expectation. It's just a general advice. We'd like to see some of these more hardcore factions, especially with the role play, and maybe they have certain rules set upon themselves, to be willing to lower the bar to entry so we see more players interacting with them and not just essentially getting burnt out by the end of that interaction with them. That's also something that we have noticed a bit. And the only other thing I can note is like with the Mogi massacre and stuff, that sort of stuff only happens when you are willing to kind of swallow your pride, but also at the same time just literally sit down with a group of people that are like-minded in an idea and just say, hey, let's see how far we can take this. And you take the punches when they're dealt, and then you move on and you decide, okay, who else can we find that is going to hit this ball back into our court once we serve it? Not everybody's going to come up and treat it how it should be treated, more or less. Like they're going to throw their own thing into the mix, or they're just not going to engage with it. It's going to happen, and it's up to you to decide if that's going to stop you, or if you're just going to cross those individuals off your list and move on to the next group and see if they're willing to bring something to the table. And because of that, I think you possibly would see more stuff similar to that. And that stuff was not possible without people willing to see what would happen. And I have to say to the folks that chose to play along within reason, thanks for doing so. People loved it, it looks like, and maybe something will happen in the future. Who knows?
Okay, Zara is next in queue because staff, and then we will get to Ryan.
I do appreciate the courtesy, but not at all a staff statement. This is going to be more personal. I was actually was one of those people who were kind of stuck in a rut and complaining about the server not having a lot of momentum, long-term stories, all that. And for what kind of helped me move on and move forward was I kind of realized I'd stuck in a rut interacting with the same few people and same few groups that I typically interact with. And so it could kind of feel like going through the motions. You kind of know what to expect. And what really brought a lot of variety back for me was role playing with a different group, being in a different region of the map. And that way, it's still unfamiliar to me. There's all sorts of different dynamics happening at different places on the server. Sometimes you can find something you didn't even expect you would enjoy, or a group that you didn't even know had their own story that they'll rope you into. I think it could be daunting, going on a long trip to a different part of the map, especially with the silent animals bug right now and having to scrounge for food on the way. But it can be rewarding too when there's all sorts of stuff out there. Next up is Vadim.
Go ahead, Vadim.
Yeah, I'll touch real quick on like the new players and kind of when to drop the act and so forth. I think a goal that I typically have and FL typically have when we're interacting with new people, obviously give them benefit of the doubt. Sometimes they're going to act like shitters, but that's just how it is. It's up to you, especially as a long-standing group or faction, to help them learn the etiquette. If they're dressed like a mill chat, be like, hey, maybe don't dress like that unless you want people to shoot you in the face all the time. I usually will try to give them a little bit of a crash course on that sort of thing, but also give them an objective to work towards. Like, hey, you know what? Go do this task for me, or go find this person and come back to me. And maybe sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the 3 out of the 10 people that you do that with, if they enjoy the server and they stick with it and they build something, great. You were successful in that. And then with reference to the other part of the topic, I'll say I see a lot, and this may be just anecdotal for my part, but coming from somebody who was a solo for so long and then joined a group, what happens sometimes is characters will either they'll die and they'll start a new character and they immediately join that same group. And kind of touching on what Zara was saying was, put yourself in a different environment. Maybe go solo for a long time instead of running right back to that same group that you had. It's very difficult, I think, to fully flesh out and develop a character in a group, especially a larger group, because you tend to just fall into those same routines and you become sort of a cog in the machine, and there's not a chance for you to be your own thing. So that would be my suggestion, is to, if you're creating a new character, go solo for a while, do something different. And that's kind of the way I'd put it, basically.
Go ahead, Eamon.
I think like sometimes it's hard to gauge how far and how to interact with a new player sometimes. So when I joined Dog, and I've told this story to many people, what really got me into the server was being held up by Regime and Starry, and they had like me and 3 of my real life friends that I played the server with at the time, and they killed like 2 of us, and then the last 2 had to like fight it out. And I love that interaction, and that really got me like hooked onto the server. But I would imagine that some people would have hated that interaction and probably never played the server again. So sometimes it's hard, especially as a hostile faction, to try and, with new players, like work out how far to go and how much to do. We get feedback that some people really, really loved the interaction and going quite deep with them, like with the role play. And then others probably didn't like it that much. It's kind of hard to, and you have to find a medium. And sometimes that's hard. Sometimes that's hard. Sometimes, and it all depends on like the mood that you're in at the time, like when you play in, etc. I don't think anyone's being malicious with new players. I just think sometimes it's hard to gauge with them, like how far to go. So I just want to make that point.
I think it's with new people it is definitely very tricky to balance because it's like one person that's like, I mean, because you don't know how into RP they're gonna be, because like one person could be like super into the RP and they could walk away like, holy shit, that was amazing, and then you've got like some other guy that's just came in from like V++ and is like, yo, what the fuck is this? This is like super fucking cringe, man. Just kill me, bro. Just kill me, bro.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can get some people who seem terrified in character, and you can see like out of character, like fear coming through in character. But then you hear after the interaction that they actually really enjoyed that, and yeah. But then if you're in the moment at the time, it's like, well, this guy is terrified. Like maybe we should just chill out a little bit and whatever. And I feel like when they asked like, how do you do this, how do you do that, I think like saying like F5 muscle and stuff, that's kind of cool. I think it's like a good introduction to like roleplay, especially if the new player hasn't, they kind of learn that, like, they kind of get excited by that and like the concept of it. But don't take it too far. Don't like shoot them because they say, "Hey man, I'm new to the server." That's just proper cringe. But yeah, that shouldn't happen. There's another point I was going to say, but I've kind of forgot. I'll come back in a minute.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to weigh in on this topic? Go ahead, Peter.
I just wanted to touch a little bit on the issue of like the new players and such. Like, I'll just say that when I was new, I struggled with roleplay. Like, I've always wanted to, but just didn't have the experience. And over the course of like playing for a while and meeting a bunch of different groups, I would say that everybody does a really great job of like leading by example and just like continuing with that mindset is probably the best course. Like if you're running into a new player and they're, questionable, like their role play is, just not really on the same level as yours, like just don't hate them for it or like give them a hard time, which in my experience, I never really ran into anyone with that sort of issue. So I think everyone's doing a pretty decent job with that. Just kind of keep in mind that, we've been around for a long time and not everybody's on the same level as we are. So you do it at your discretion. I mean, I understand if the person doesn't have a mic, like there's not really a really whole like good way to role play with that interaction if they can't talk to you. So just rather than like killing them, just leave them alone or tell them to go somewhere. But that's just my 2 cents on that. And then, yeah, I think that's about it, really. Like, I think everyone's doing a pretty decent job with it. Just leading by example is probably the best thing that I can, or the best advice that I can give.
Eamon's next in queue.
So before this wipe began, like we as a group we had a meeting basically, and we were trying, like there was a lot of us not playing and we were trying to understand why that was. And we concluded that like Doug has changed a lot especially within the last year, and you know, how we, to a certain degree, how we used to be and how hard we used to go. You know, it's not people. Some people like it, but for the most part, it's can be too much for some people. And we had a discussion about, like, you know, toning it down a little bit. Like, one thing we always, a lot of feedback that we got as a group was that people, you know, we couldn't really interact with people on a basic level. You know, it always had to be like somewhat of a hold up, and we had to try and invent a way to be able to role play with, you know, people that we've never role played with before, etc. And that's why we did, you know, that's why we did the castle and stuff like that, and we did the garage, so we could open avenues to meet people in a more normal setting. So that's in reply to what Decent said with, you know, some of the more older hardcore players. It's definitely something that like we've noticed as well, that things have changed these days, and you know, we have to a certain degree have tried to adjust and be more approachable and engage with the server again, because we found that a lot of us were stopping playing. So yeah.
Solus is next in queue.
There's two good examples I want to bring up and make sure the resources get kind of passed around. The community, and I'm not sure who exactly is communicated to the article, but they've put together a wiki with like glossary of common terms, like things that you would say out of character and what they would translate to in Doug and common RP parlance. Pointing new players to that alone, or even using that yourself to guide players that kind of break that fourth wall and say things weirdly. Say I'll be able to snag in just a second, but somebody else might toss it in there for you deep. So using that's going to be incredibly valuable. The more it gets used, the more feedback it'll be given, and the more it'll change as well. They'll have more opportunities to share that with better people and better and blah blah blah. So obviously, it's cringe to a point if somebody kind of breaks that fourth wall and starts saying things like out of game, or they're about DayZ servers spawning. It's our responsibility to kind of keep it together and try to see if that person still can be brought into the community. But there is a respect level. Like, don't feel like you have to be at the whim of somebody who's obviously new to the server. There's a really fun example that just got passed around like a month ago or something. It's probably older than that though. I think it's a couple years or 2 years something. When Dark as Midnight held up some kid who had his face painted with ash, and he'd given him a bunch of shit. He wasn't kind of taking it seriously that he's being held up, and he famously he's seen poopy on the YouTubes is what he told him, and then he got gunned down by 3 different Darkest Midnight members. And like, obviously try to involve people in what we're creating here, but they don't feel like you have to let it happen like that. Like, there's a line where it's perfectly fine to do a firing squad, put the person down, and then the freaking famous person himself here in Q, put the line down and like know where your group will hold to it. That's it.
Peter is next in queue.
There was just one more thing that I wanted to mention about the new player thing. Like, we actually had an interaction with a player recently who, like, right in the middle of the conversation, like, he like deliberately said that he was like breaking the fourth wall or whatever and like going out of character, and he asked us a question and we just answered it and then moved back onto the role play. So there are certain situations like that it is okay to break the fourth wall, like someone in chat said, you know. But the main thing I wanted to touch back on was the inter-faction interactions and like the server stagnating and all that stuff. I've been around for quite a while, and it seems like in my experience that's just kind of a natural thing on Doug, to where, you know, you have your highs and your lows when it comes to that sort of thing. I think I understand that we're all on a role play server and we want to keep a lot of our things in game as much as possible, but I would like to see groups a little bit more lenient when it comes to like Discord or TeamSpeak. Not necessarily like meetups or whatever. Like, you don't want to like schedule anything because that's kind of boring, but at least being a little bit more open to talking out of character to try to set something up, at least giving like a time frame rather than like a specific time and specific place. Because I understand that a lot of us are adults, we have jobs, some of us have kids. So we're all kind of like doing our own thing outside of the game as well. So trying to be a little bit more lenient about that and willing to communicate out of character to get the ball rolling on certain things would be appreciated.
Poopy's next in queue.
No, I was just going to say that it happens so many different times where you run into people and they don't understand what's going on, or they're like, obviously everybody's heard it. Everybody's heard the I'm new to the server, or I don't give a shit, just kill me. And there's been so many times where we've obviously tried to continue that conversation, but at a certain point, you obviously can't force somebody to engage with you, you know? So, but I've seen it happen so many times where we have shown people how to role play and then also just broke character and then just, you know, stopped doing our stupid voices and then just went normal to try to teach somebody how to actually interact on the server. But yeah, I think going to a certain limit is good. And then it's also fun to just, Harvey, your voice is stupid. And yeah, so I think it is good to give that limit to just break your character and then just help them out, you know? But yeah, that's all I got.
Do we have anything else to say on this topic? Not, then we can move on to the next one. I think there's only one more topic that we've got that the presenter is actually here. At least they were last time I checked. Which comes from Roxy. So if Roxy is here, then the floor is yours. So many fucking people. I think Roxy was here earlier at least, but if not, then I guess I can just...
Roxy had to go.
Ah, okay. Let me dig up and... Well, actually, I don't even need to dig up. Ideas for improving engagement with the lug server. I've enjoyed my time there, though it's probably 30-70 in favor of Doug as to how much I play. I'm afraid that I don't have ideas for how to promote it, but maybe someone in the community does. So, thoughts on the lug server and how we can raise awareness of it and also encourage more people to either give it a try or stick around once they have given it a try. Ooh. Admin hosted events is an interesting idea. I think a big thing with servers is getting people in the door can be kind of hard. But then once you actually have got people in that door and they start kind of building things up, whether they've like gathered some things or whatever the hell, then they might be more inclined to stay. Go ahead, Eamon.
My conclusion on Livonia is that it's like a Marmite map. You either really love it or you really hate it. It leans more into hating it from most players, and people just won't play it if they don't like it. It's kind of hard to, yeah. Marmite map. Does everyone know what I mean by that?
Yes. Well, I do.
What's it called in America? Like Vegemite or something?
Vegemite. That's Australia,
Vegemite?
mate.
That's Australia.
That's
yeah.
Australia, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't
Like
know
even,
what
yeah.
it's called.
It's not a
TLDR, you
palatable
love
map.
it or you hate it.
Yeah, that's all I've got though.
A lug community night, like Matt suggested, could be kind of fun. I guess that does also fall under the umbrella of like kind of events, not necessarily maybe an admin hosted one. If it's just like going to be a bunch of us being like, ah, yes, we will go on lug on this night and we will fuck around, and then with maybe the influx of players there, other people that haven't played on the server before will be like, oh, this server's populated, let's go on here, and then snowball effect.
There's maybe there's no queue, so I'll just come back in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Maybe because obviously the map team have done a lot on there with custom areas. Some people like when that was all being announced and stuff, and when it was Lug was coming back and going live again, like that was all the rage. Maybe we can just have some reminders of that it is, the map team have done a lot of work, and there is a lot of custom areas on that. Because for people who are new to Doug, maybe they know that we do a Lug, but then they're unsure. They don't know that it's actually modded, like the map and stuff. So yeah. So that's all I've got on that. Maybe could be a good idea to promote that maybe every now and then.
I've played on Log and I completely, until you mentioned it, I'd completely forgotten that there was, custom locations on there. Like, it had completely slipped my mind, so I think that could say a lot as well as someone that's actually played in it, but I just forgot about it.
Well, from my understanding, there's a lot of issues with areas of the map which are very empty, and I think the custom areas fix a lot of those issues potentially. That's what I've heard anyway. I've not played much Lug, I'll be honest.
Yeah, I think having Lug tied to Doug in terms of wipes as well. I don't know how staff feels about wiping one server but not wiping another. I don't know. I mean, I couldn't foresee that being some sort of logistical undertaking or whatever, but just in case staff are opposed to it, which I wouldn't imagine, but
Well, it's more so that Livonia were trying to, if anything, foster a community for its own, where there's no real expectation for our existing players on Doug for really any reason unless they just want to for the sake of it. Maybe they want they want to back off from whatever's going on Chernarus, but they still want to play on a platform that we're hosting and support because they know that they'll have still the same tools, the same mod experience overall, just a different terrain and slightly different players that they haven't come across necessarily. And if they want to do so, absolutely awesome to see. If they don't want to, we're not going to force them to either. We've done where we can to add new stuff. Me and Blend sat down. We made almost 100 unique items specific for Livonia. And so far, the reaction has just been, hey, bring those to Chernarus. And I'm just going to have to draw the line in the sand and say, no, this stuff was meant for Livonia. These people deserve their own unique stuff, just like Chernarus has its own unique stuff. It's awesome to see Livonia events made by the community, and seeing the turnout for those usually is pretty decent by the sounds of it. I don't have the time myself to check them out. More or less, my time's just very limited. I know that for Diesel as well, we kind of just decided, hey, we're going to wipe both servers at the same time, more so for convenience on our end, just to make sure everything is taken care of on the same day. If there's any issues, we can sit down and take care of it. If it comes down to staggering wipes, it's just up to Diesel's discretion and the availability for him.
Okay, so staggering wipes is not out of the question, but it would really depend on availability of Diesel, and I could just say availability of staff to be ready to deal with any issues that crop up.
Yep, dealer's choice.
If people have anything else to say on this topic, then by all means go ahead, though if not, then we can move into other topics. Okay. Next topic comes from Dash. Flux was here but has had to leave, so we'll tackle Flux's next topic after we do Dash's topic on giving official groups the ability to create armbands and flags. Go ahead, Harvey.
Yeah, I'll talk on this one because he stole it from me anyway. Because he does that. He steals all my ideas. There used to be a thing. I don't know if staff stopped wanting to do it because it was just a big pain in the ass with group turnover and whatnot. But problem is, server's busy. There's a limited number of armbands that are available for raincoats. Dying's nice and all, but not everybody's doing that or able to or wants to or gets the result that they want to wear it. I think at one point there's like 4 groups running around with orange armbands. It's kind of difficult to tell who's who, and I wonder if we want to bring back the idea of having like an interstitial group to faction level where if the group's been around for a while, they can have armbands back.
So let's go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a big point to make, but I do like that you touched on that at the end, Harvey. So the group turnover, when we're talking about that, is monumental. When we look at it is a low barrier to entry right now to creating an official group with 3 whitelist members, and we didn't arrive at that arbitrarily either. That's been made easy on purpose in the past. But with that turnover being so monumental in the past, when groups were able to make armbands and had those additional perks, it came with the initial faction system that a lot of people who are now in the community just had never seen. And that, for its own reasons, was kind of moved on away from. But there was a sense where if you did create that, you hit that level of becoming an official group and you existed and met all the levels for a certain amount of time, then that's when you would achieve things like an armband or the faction item. There were tiers that you would hit. And for a variety of reasons, the staff team moved away from that. And we try to push communities to hold groups accountable itself. So that discussion's completely open. But yeah, just like Sync's saying that he's got the total amount of stuff like not included dying there. The choices available now are huge, but it's not to say that this isn't a goal that's out of the question. Say one of the biggest lines we've hit in the past when this has come up is community involvement as well. Like help with certain dedicated community members to create these textures that we're going to be burning through, because it's just an armband model. It's there, but we would need somebody to put in the work to make sure the texture is there for each additional group that comes up. And right now, delegating things with groups becoming active and you all keeping your rosters in check alone is monumental. But there has to be some type of gating mechanism. Say, if not 6 months before you get an armband, something would have to exist there.
Go ahead, Harvey, to respond.
Muted, Harvey?
Whoops. Yeah, like you said, like at the end there, maybe there's that again an interstitial. If tier 1 is official group, tier 2 being faction, maybe there's a tier 1.5 in there after 6 months or whatever conditionals you need to put in place there to make your own time as staff to create the armbands and do all the work to put them in there is not just going to be undone by the group fucking off the next week, because like a lot of them do, they just fail for whatever reason. Yeah. If there's a way forward, that'd be cool. I mean, I don't think anybody's going to say no to this, but obviously that's a lot of extra burden on staff to do the actual work.
Eamon's next.
Yeah, it's just a plus to what Harvey said. I feel there's a handful of groups who are not factions who have been here for a long time, and they've, in my eyes, they've done more than enough to have their own armband, and they don't run the risk of disappearing overnight, basically. So yeah, just a a plus, basically, with what Harvey was saying.
My suggestion to them is submit a faction application. There are many groups that I agree with you fit that bill. They need to make the next step. Submit an application, have us review it, and see if they are truly deserving, besides just being able bodies on the server.
Go ahead, Shady.
Just a question. Are there any other available like flag mods or something to implement to give people a wider choice? As far as armbands go?
I'll answer that. There was one. It was pushed through and failed by a small margin. The second stage of the CCE vote, and actually, I have the source files for it, and it's something that's kind of on the list eventually to look into, because there's a few things in that mod that I think would be a very beneficial fit for Doug, and there's also things in there that were just kind of too janky, and it didn't feel like it fit the rest of the atmosphere, and that's I think a big chunk of why it didn't pass to begin with. So, but yeah, like one of the examples was like a full sleeve armband kind of, and I thought the model for that looked really nice. Some of the other ones that included was the ability to put the actual flag on a stick and have it on your shoulder, which is that passed a long time ago. So there are some options at least.
To amend Sarge's point there, say it's relatively easy to put more flags in. Specifically, the armband that would come along with them would have to be kind of work where that texture is overlaid on the armband itself. And we're creating tech debt, which is it's kind of software engineering term within the Doug mod itself. Hours and hours of work were put in by Blend and others to do things like we do on the Doug mod, like making the bandanas out of the flag, which is not available on vanilla. So any additional flag that we may add, say if we don't immediately commit to that additional work to make it available as a bandana or to make it available with the other things Doug can do, then we're immediately, backpack. We're creating instances where a new player is constantly finding things like, oh, well, you can make a backpack out of this flag, but not this flag. You can make a bandana out of this flag, but not this flag. And in the end, that overhead is not worth the additional content being on the server.
Okay, do we have anything else we'd like to say on this? Go ahead, Worm. Check. Can hear you, yeah.
I don't know if this is a dog shit idea. Could very well be one. But maybe instead of giving all the groups their own unique armbands, we just take the pre-existing ones and then attach them to the group. That way only that group can make like the Helping Hands cock armband, for example. If that makes sense, if I'm explaining that correctly. Or we make like 10 kind of generic ones where if people become if they become a group, which I think the qualifications are just like existing and having people, then you can like kind of choose which of those generic ones you want. I don't know if that makes sense or anyone has any thoughts on that.
My opinion over this overall has been we are willing to support groups, especially with their identities, as long as they are willing to put in the work and become a pillar of our community. We will be gladly able, again, if we have the manpower and resources, we will shower them within reason stuff to further signify that this is them when you're running into them. For instance, Forsaken Loyalists and their Rider jackets that have like 30 variants for it that I sat down and did. It took me like way too long. You got the cult robes. That was like $200, $300 out of Ammo's pocket to have modeled, configured, properly animated, everything like that. I'm of the opinion that if you are simply here just a group of people, deal with what you got, work with what you got, because if you start asking for all these specific stuff that you want, eventually everybody else is going to want the same thing. And in my opinion, for the amount of work as well as bot updates included, it just isn't worth it in the long haul, when at the end of the day, the person themselves should be much more important than just the armband on their shoulder.
Okay.
Go ahead, Dallas.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think I agree with the problem being there of, not having enough armbands. I see 39 options in the chat, and I think that probably includes like Fireflies, for example. They have their own and they have yellow, or Dam has their own, but they also have red. So I think a lot of those double up with the groups, and they don't really, and giving them their own unique one isn't necessarily going to change. Example, Dam. I think the best solution in my eyes, being someone who just started a new group and it was kind of tough to find an armband, I think you backfill it and you just have more options for people with completely different colors, whether that's like cutting up shirts or, whatever the case is. Maybe you can combine double armbands between two different armbands, so it's two colors, whatever the case is. I think if we're talking about solving that issue, I think the better solution would be to backfill behind with brand new armbands. So I just want to add that.
Yeah, Desync's probably chomping at the bit to share because he's actually got the function. He's got to pull up his notepad and find where he has the math. But that ends up being multiple thousands of specific, like individual things that's done by the mod team directly when we do the double armband combinations. The way it currently works as double armbands is also unique to Doug. It's a parlor trick like others, since it's the double armbands as a one item. Like obviously vanilla DayZ doesn't have two armband slots. So you can't like just make that available, right? Unless you're changing base code on DayZ. Ultimately, it's probably not going to be something we go to. I hoped kind of taking up the time would give Desync the time to post the number, but
Whatever it is,
how
like
many
by the power
combinations is
2
it?
or whatever.
It's
It's like just, it's almost 1,000 textures, basically what you're asking for.
Which is
And as well as
squared every time
model
you add a new
reworking
one.
and everything, not including configuring. The amount of work for it is just isn't worth it.
Because everything that becomes a possible double armband also has to be a possible single left armband rather than the right. It's hilarious. It's a fun solution to allow double armbands the way we've done it on Doug, and it's insane work from the outside looking in. It's not something you can expand and expand and expand realistically.
Do we have anything else we'd like to say on this topic? So what Matt posted, I want to swing back around to and pose that as a. Actually, yeah, we might as well fucking do it now. Matt in the chat posted something that intrigued me quite a bit. How many suggestions or things we want to implement on Doug or Lug could be done by paying for it, and roughly how much would it cost? Could we raise money to do it as a community?
I would argue probably no. It's not worth the headache of trying to hopefully curate other modders that aren't already picked up or working on their own projects. Most people from our experience who step up to do something usually end up not doing it at all, or in a way kind of fake their credentials. They're not actually involved, or they're just vibe coders. And that's not something we have a bar, and a lot of people unfortunately are way too far below it, to the point of which we have to step in and just redo all the work they've given us anyway.
To add on to that, like the example at the start I gave about all those extra things that we had to think about when they keep building the cross, it's like there's an existing mod for it already, but that doesn't have any of those things. Regardless, they don't know what those things are to make it work for Doug.
To answer Harvey, we already source from 3D online shops. It's then the matter of configuring and bringing it up to being usable within the DayZ environment. thankfully, we have Sarge here, we have Encinitas, we have Ammo, who are fairly well educated and have enough experience within reason that they're able to at least work with each other to solve issues. And that's why we're finally getting some stuff that's been long standing within the CCE closer to being out the door. And as well as that, I think when we can, we sit down and we genuinely say, like, okay, well, we have this amount of a budget. Do we really want to invest money into this? And if so, there's still that risk of, can it transition from the 3D online shop to DayZ as a whole? There are times where, unfortunately, a great idea just falls flat on its face because of something that was just completely unforeseen. Blake and Sarge already have their plates fairly full, not including real life stuff they have to take care of. They already have their list, especially with our internal Trello.
Matt also asked about fixing the website.
Feel free to rejoin the team, man.
And Matt specifically would actually have some good background on that. We utilize WordPress for the website right now, and there's some elements, obviously, like the server page that doesn't work, and we can't make direct edits to that. If the discussion were to be had, it was just what platform might we change to, and then just kind of looking at that. Every one that we could possibly change to has a free trial method and stuff. It's, again, just like any big change or kind of revolution like that, it requires people to, the task has to be delegated to someone, and the initial work has to just be shown. Create the account within a trial thing and show like the work partially done. It's always a matter of kind of trying to be the change you want to see, and then having people jump on and hang on to your idea and to kind of push it more and more. We definitely all looked at kind of better ideas for the website on and off.
Shady is next in queue.
Never mind. Sorry.
Fair enough. Okay, do we have anything else we'd like to say on this topic? Or should we move on to our next one? Okay, if not, last one should be fairly straightforward, so I don't think we'll suffer that much from not having Flux here to elaborate on it, but a discussion about the new rule in general, and maybe the staff team can give more feedback. So this will be the new rule about faction sizes and faction and group sizes being capped at 15. Just curious what people's thoughts are on this change. So if anyone has anything else they'd like to say about it, then by all means. Worm, go ahead.
I think this may have already been discussed, possibly, maybe, but I told the boys I'd bring it up anyways, just because I've had recruits messaging me scared of like if they're going to be kicked out of the group or whatever. But what's everyone's thoughts on like a and of course we understand the rule, and I like the rule. I understand it. It's cool. But what's our thoughts on just having the cap on recruitment and then waiting for the numbers to organically fall to 15 rather than forcing leadership to make the awkward decision of who to kick out and be the bad guy? And just kind of like waiting, because I'm pretty sure DC is already on the cusp anyways, like 16, 17-ish. I know some other factions are kind of around the same spot. So just wanted to put that out there. I told the troops I would bring it up just to see what people think.
I want everyone to be able to share their ideas, so I don't want to just kind of go point for point. But I believe from the team's perspective, allowing 2 months for like everyone to decide like where they're going to sit with the rule is something that is going to lead towards that natural turnover. Groups that are under necessarily the 15 cap have already been discussed with about like the recruitment efforts and kind of what would be more reasonable. So I think that the time that we're expecting the rule to turn over should address that exact issue.
Okay, I just had to try. Had to go back and say I tried.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to say on it? Ooh, actually a really good point from Flowers?
I think Plank's got a cue first.
Ooh, oh, yeah, Plank does.
Sorry, it took me a second there, but I think that it's not really the 15 that is like the hard pill to swallow. I think that's a very large number of people. I think for a lot of groups, it's more of the, you know, people in the group that are pivotal characters in the story and like the group's lore that might not have as much time to play as like me. You know, I literally play every chance I get. I don't have a job and I play all the time. And we have members in our group that, you know, they wake up once every 2 weeks. Minimum. I mean, to the point where I'm having to like question if like, or like ask them if they've been on and stuff like that. And it's just, I think that's really where, and I think the 2 month period will be fine, but down on the road as like activity changes within groups and stuff like that, it does kind of suck having to be like, well, you know, someone's going to have to take your place because obviously, you know, groups change and it's not always the same 15 people for years and years to come. Sometimes it is, but that's usually not the case. I don't know. That was my 2 cents.
Quick shout to Flowers' point. So that can be brought up after maybe another cue, or you can speak on it if you'd like as well. But that would be against the spirit of what we're trying to kind of settle on here with this time. So in a couple different ways, like that question can be asked, and it would be met with the same answer. That we would have to look at it reasonably and decide what those two groups are doing. They would be in a perfect position to be corrected to simply be two separate groups, and there would be an accountability path. But no, we would not be okay with that example.
Carter is next in queue.
Am I heard?
Yes.
I'm gonna be really honest. You know, fireflies. We're not agreeing with this rule at all. We don't like it. We find it really invasive on the whole gist of things. I know, probably gonna happen no matter what. That being said, there are, I think, like 17 people on a roster. I would say about maybe 1/4 of that can play maybe once or twice a week. And 2 months, we don't really think it's enough time because like there's still people in our group that are developing their story with us, and there's some veterans like myself who, you know, we're trying to stick to our thing, and then this curveball gets thrown away, and I just like my cue or even wanting to speak. It's like what brought upon this. Like if someone's in another group and you're seeing them do something really fishy with, you know, a raid alarm or whatever you want to call it, like why is this infringed on everyone instead of the people a problem? I will say there is a couple fireflies that they will stick around Pusta because of the past, in the way that people have stone aged us. And if that was a problem, you know, in recent months, just tell us and we'll tell them not to do that. Like I don't agree with the rule, but I'm just that's my piece.
Peter is next in queue. If you're
Mic check,
yeah,
Peter.
you're dead.
There we go. Can you hear me
go.
now?
Yeah.
I don't know what I was doing there. I guess I could see that there are some people that are like highly in favor of this rule and others that are highly against it. I'm kind of in the middle as to where like I'm not exactly sure if it's really all that necessary. I mean, for example, like the group that I'm in, like we're sitting around roughly a dozen, and then there are a couple of inactive people in our group that when they do come back, we'll be sitting at around that 15 number. And I I like going around and like recruiting new people on the server and like showing them and being like mentors or like leading by example and like teaching them how to do the role play thing and all that and such and get like acclimated to the server and the other factions and whatnot. But I could see how like limiting the number of people in a group or a faction can like promote others to create their own and such. So that's a positive in my opinion. But you know, at any given time, like even though we have anywhere from 12 to 15 people in our group, like there's only like probably four, maybe five on at the same time at most. And I can understand like maybe the goal here is to limit like a bunch of people being on at the same time or like preventing zerging, like which, you know, having 15 people running around together. And I know that that's against the rules and such, and that's a whole different topic. But like I said, I'm just not entirely sure if it's really all that necessary. I don't know what the underlying goal with limiting the faction like number is.
I'll defer to Zara because staff, and then we'll swing back to the rest of the queues. Go ahead, Zara.
So two points to make. So the first is a general statement. I think one of the underlying anxieties regarding this rule is the idea of if they're no longer on your roster, marked inactive or active, you don't necessarily have to cut them out of the social aspect. You can still include them in things, you can still talk to them and share things with them, but that's one point. I think you can still hang out with them. You're not necessarily on the chopping block of like never being able to hang out with those people again. Now the second point, this is actually just a like a personal thing coming from me and not the staff team. I was actually presented I think an interesting idea as a prompt. I wanted to see what you guys think of it, of allowing, say, a slightly higher leeway or amount of members, 18 or 20 even, for official factions. Bit of like a perk in addition to map edits and a custom item. Main reasoning being that factions are expected to push stories. They are expected to hold good behavior and have good behavior with whatchamacallit, raids, zerging, all that. Some factions hold events. Some factions have a starter rank, such as Mangos and Warboys for their whole recruitment process. So I think allowing factions to have that little bit of wiggle room would be nice, especially with all of the things that they engage in. So that is up to y'all to discuss amongst yourselves.
No, my queue is next. The main point that I was kind of coming at and thinking about was defining activity. And I know this is a bit rich coming from me that's not played consistently in fucking years, but I think it can like if you've got a group of 15, 20 people or whatever we'll say, of course, you have the whole like whether they're active or inactive, but I think a lot of the time it can kind of be more of a less of a open and shut case and more of a revolving door. It's like, oh, sometimes like maybe I'm gone for like a month and then I show back up and then someone else has to disappear for like a month because they've got things going on, or someone else has to appears for a couple weeks and then disappears. Someone's like super active for a span of like 6 months and then disappears, or it is kind of a tricky thing to quantify. Anyway, next person. Actually, I'll defer to Desync and then we'll resume with our other queues. Go ahead, Desync.
I know this is a major ask overall, and as well as with this limit to groups and faction sizes, we're still enforcing the roaming and raiding request when you are interested in doing something, you still need to come and talk to us, and we give you the approval, or we tell you to cut your numbers. We're still also requiring that as well. Just keep that in mind. We are hoping from this, seeing that it's going to be 2 months from that date that we first put the announcement out, it will give players time to get their discords in order, because we know that people like to have stuff structured, like in there, have stuff separated between just base gameplay, like gaming stuff, and the Doug serious stuff. We hope to see from these groups and factions, because it's not just one faction, it's not just two factions, and it's not even that they're being necessarily problematic. It's just that overall we're seeing a massive bloat from several factions, and to the point of which, once these reviews are being pushed out more, once I think Joe is handling some of these, you're going to get the announcement as well. Just overall, you need to cut your recruitment. You have to stop it, full stop. It's just too many. There are some people on the team who feel that 15 even still is too many. In my opinion, 15 is kind of the sweetest spot you're probably going to get, because we understand that some factions do just have a lot of people with lots of ongoing story. I'm of the opinion that you should be at least trying to use this time frame that you have to adjust, and if need be, have these people that are leaving potentially your group or your faction, to have them build something new for themselves, and you two still continue interacting in some form. Now, am I saying that you should be roaming together 24/7, like just like how it was? No, because as far as we're concerned, circumventing. However, we have had instances where we felt it was deemed necessary, for the sake of whatever interaction story was going on, where two factions or two groups were able to come together and request that, hey, if we bring representatives from both of these groups and these factions, but we keep our number to the same as if a regular group was approaching, can we do this? Based on the instance that was provided to us, we said that yes, we felt that was a great use, as well as showing that there are more people involved with whatever idea they're trying to push, be it just roaming to control an area or raiding a group that's been bothering both of those groups. We hope to at least see maybe potentially alliances can be formed between existing groups. It's just we hope that we don't just see like somebody had made the instance of Dam West and Dam East. We hope to not see something like that, but we hope maybe something within the spirit, if that makes sense, can still continue.
Next person in queue is Santiago.
Well, I guess for me, I guess Decent mentioned that isn't necessarily behaviors or whatever that you guys were seeing. But I think that a lot of this is being kind of viewed very black and white. Like, I'm seeing in the chat a lot of like, oh, 15 is a lot, but like, we never have 15 people on all at the same time. Like, there's things to consider. Like, there's people that are on EU time. There's people that are on US on US time and stuff. And like we have members that never get to play with anyone else because they're on a different time frame. And if we cut the numbers down, it's going to be even harder for them to have somebody to play with. Beyond that, I mean, if this is if this is going forward, no matter what, the 15 people cap, it's I don't know why Worm's suggestion was kind of waved off like that. Like, it's really, it feels really shitty for everyone. I can tell you in our faction at least that to have to think about like who we're gonna cut and whatever, and like, it's been mentioned on both sides that yeah, things tend to be revolving doors. Like, I feel like it would be less, I guess, mean towards some people, instead of saying like, hey, you're not allowed to be here anymore, like, let the numbers go off and just say, hey, no more recruiting until you're under the cap limit, because organically it will be the numbers will eventually go down if we just completely stop recruiting until then. So I don't know why that, at least that suggestion can't be like thought of as a middle ground here.
Next in queue is Carter.
Kind of lost the plot of what I was going to actually say, but it's like I don't know what problem staff is seeing with people that have large numbers. But at least in the Fireflies, we don't just recruit Joe Schmo on the street. You know, we don't get all the homeless bums. We have an application. You got to get interviewed by a main member. You have to roam with us for like 2 weeks in game without any Discord VC, and then after that, then we give you a chance. It's like I don't know why we would limit something that is like in an organic setting. Like, for an example, there should be like a handshake agreement when to tone it down in certain ways of interacting with people, like we were talking about earlier, raiding or fighting or whatever. Maybe there could be something going forward where we can just have a handshake agreement where it's like, oh, you hit this number, no more. Like I don't see Fireflies ever having 30 people in it because there's never any more than 10 people online half the time. But I just don't understand where this came from out of the blue.
Yuri is next in queue.
Yeah, most of the things I wanted to say were already covered by Santiago and Carter, but just to go on from that, the consequence for our group specifically, and I'm sure there's others, at least some others right there, is that it's going to very strongly affect the European part of a group because there's just less of us on, and you kind of need more than 15 people for us to be able to log on, and there's actually people to run around with, unless you want to like start playing at 10 p.m. in the night, or you're just really lucky. Like 15 people doesn't mean there's 15 of us online at one time. I'm not sure if you've ever had that. It just like 15 can mean it 2 or 3 people can be on at the same time because 2 or 3 people have time at this particular hour on this day during the same time zone. And because that the rule change as it is now essentially means that you can't play with your group together even if you stay. It's like, I think part of a group will, like, even those 15 who are most active, I believe will be less active, relatively speaking, because when you want to play, there's nobody to play with, so you're just not going to log on and bother. And we've also had several people, both the more active ones and less active ones, that say, like, if this rule comes into effect like this, they're just going to quit Doug because, like, we essentially have to tell our own members, you can't play with us anymore. And it's kind of hurtful to have those conversations with several of our members and have to judge people by their activity, saying, yeah, so you're too busy with your child, yeah, so you can't play with us anymore. Like, it's just gonna be hurtful, and it would make it a lot less bad if either the cap would get increased, either for everyone or just for factions, or at the very least the grace period would be extended so people can naturally like stop playing. But as of right now, it's going to really hurt some people, I would say.
Dallas, you're next in queue.
Yeah, I just kind of want to agree with Santiago and Worm on this topic. I saw the rule, and at first I was like, definitely agree with 15. I had, some instances in the game where I was running into groups that were telling me, yeah, at some points we have, 2 different groups of people running around with 6+ people. And it's like, there can only be so many groups that this rule particularly applies for. And with everything that's been said so far about kicking people out and, not having active people, I don't really agree with the idea of like, well, if you kick them out, they can still, be around and socialize with you and be your friend. Yes, they can. But as someone who has left a group before with people in the group that I was still friends with, it still is very tough to, you know, be around that group because they're going and doing stuff that they just can't include you on. So I just don't think that idea is really possible in a lot of instances. And I think if you implemented this softly for the groups that are 16, 17, there can only be so many of them. And I think it'd be really easy to just monitor and be like, okay, you guys obviously can't be running around with these two groups of people doing all this stuff, but we won't force you to make those crazy decisions of kicking someone out that just maybe isn't on all the time. So I just think there's a better way to implement it versus cutting it off at 15, making people kick out their groups.
Blaze is next in queue.
Yo.
Hey.
I just wanted to respond to Zara making the suggestion for full-on factions to get the 5 extra slots. I think that we forget that some of these smaller groups also want to recruit, and all these big groups are famous, so they go straight to them for recruitment. I've been in the big groups, I've been in the small groups, and like right now I just started a new group. We can't find anybody that isn't in a group because they're all in the big ones. So I just want everybody to keep that in mind, that this limit will help the community overall, even if it's hurting your individual members in the moment. I think it's better off for the small guy and the big groups in the long run.
Harvey's next in queue.
Oh boy. Actually, it's funny. Blaze actually touched on one of the things I was going to say to expand that. Like, there's a finite number of people who play Doug on a regular basis, the quote unquote active community members, and concentrating those numbers in just a few groups leads to stagnation. Similar to how things get when the gig alliances were floating around, you're dealing with more and more people with little variety between them. And encouraging smaller groups should, at least over time, lead to more variety in groups and how that impacts the overall politics of Doug and all that shit. But the hard pill to swallow in this, guys, is I think groups have let their rosters get away from them, either due to mismanaging those spreadsheets or power creep, whatever it is. If you're already pushing the risk of breaking the 15 plus active member limit, you should have probably toned that down a long time ago. It's okay to say no to people for recruiting. I have to do it a lot. It sucks, especially if someone and they have history and they're quality people, but you can't just have everyone on your team.
Eamon's next in queue.
So, as far as I'm concerned, right? So being active is playing once in a 2-week period, correct?
Yes, specifically. You can play for
So
no
if
more than 10 minutes and you'll be active for the 2 weeks.
Okay, so if a group member is inactive, if they play like once every 3 weeks, for example, like they're very inactive, but they can they run around with the group in character for that one session, almost as like a red shirt? Is that okay?
The red shirt is an incredible term to bring up because it is wholly encouraged. It's something I've directly encouraged amongst people of my own faction. Yes, if you want to go off and participate in someone else's story in an aspect, you're free to do so. You're free to be a minor character. Just be someone that's there, a body, as long as you're under a zerking limit in any sense. The roster levels and groups coalescing together is to focus on who you can raid with without asking beforehand, and who you can base with to create large bases with ever accumulating amounts of stuff.
Yeah, I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to understand Firefly's situation. I think when it comes to FL, I'll probably use Roland as an example, or Locke. Like, they don't have massive play times, and their activity, is probably like maybe once a month they'll show up, but they still want to run around with the group and push their character, and they have, in the past they've been heavily involved, and their character is really important in the lore of the group. Can they, if they can still run around and RP like once a month with us, like, and also as well, like, we have people taking breaks, coming back and forth from the game all the time. Like, couldn't it just be switch people out to inactive? Say, hey, yeah, I've been getting pretty stressed. I'll sit out for a month and play this new game that I want to play, and you can then jump in and play for a month or whatever, or then someone else will go inactive and you can then switch around. Like, you can do that, right? Well, that's not breaking the new rule. That's just keeping things up to date.
Ultimately, that would be fine, but that's not in the spirit of what we're trying to kind of push here with the bloat desync mentions. I've got a note here that I've been kind of waiting. I wanted more people to kind of share feedback, but this idea that like old timers coming back, or somebody who kind of puts Doug down for a while and returns and still having a place within your group, it's kind of a valid thought, but it leaves things like you're thinking in a static position. Not you, Eamon, specifically, but the thinking itself is more static. Like, if somebody has stepped away for X amount of time, or somebody's no longer involved in the day to day, in ORCC, the example, you literally get made into a retired old fart. It was a joke Sam Finch himself made way back when he stepped away from the game. He was made into a retired old fart. He's no longer on the roster. He's not part of group decisions and anything. If he showed back up, he'd be entitled to any gear he wants. He'd show up at the trade window and it'd be like, oh my fucking God, it's Sam Finch. You'd give him gear, he'd hang out for an hour. But he's not a member of ORCC at that point. Like, he has to do work to become a member of ORCC again, in a sense, or a member of the group you're running with. And that preserves the sense of integrity that you have for any new people you've recruited or new stories you're building too. It's almost insulting to think that you can have people, up to 10 people in your group, that are working hard and doing the effort that takes to keep you relevant and to talk with people across the map wide. And then all of a sudden, people that have just not been taking part in your story up to this point can log in and, oh my gosh, it's somebody who's been a member of FL for the longest time. Like, everything they're doing matters. It's it's not fair to what you're building. And to kind of go up just a few messages to where kind of Santiago mentions that he's afraid that maybe even after 2 months, you're still going to have that awkward conversation of kicking people out. That's the same concern that Harvey has to say. He kind of takes it head on. People ask to join all the time, and even if they'd be a good fit, they know their shit, they're doing things according to what Doug would want them to do, he still has to tell people no a lot. That awkward conversation is always there, whether it occurs after they've been a member of your group for a year, or whether it occurs if they just want to join now after X amount of time. It is an expectation we have of all group leaders here to be mature enough to tell people that, hey, we're growing too much, like, we need to be in control of what we're representing across the server. They're looking at the faction, Fireflies as an example. It's 24 listed players with 19 active. Like, and I wouldn't generally do this outright. Say, exactly. And I don't want to go point for point like that, Jerry. Those are actual people. Give them an opportunity to be something more than just a Firefly. They're not just people you've collected on your list over the course of time. If they log back in, encourage them to take up something else. It shouldn't be okay with you to have somebody who's just gone and existing as a member of your group forever. Like, it's not the environment we're trying to build on Doug. That bloat, as we keep referring to it, is unhealthy. And say I'll remove that from my extra points here, because the sense I wanted to cover there specifically is kicking people out or feeling that they can no longer be with you, or it's just untenable. It's not what we're expecting you to have with people that you tell you can no longer be a firefly. Like, that's not the end of it all. Like, if you have to say that to a member of your group after X amount of time, yes, you are failing as a group leader. It is your job to make sure that they are fulfilled, they're enjoying their time on Doug, they're doing things that they can enjoy, and arguably, if they've stepped away for 2 months for life, but still have time to play games, it's stale for them. Give them an opportunity to make the gameplay not stale. Encourage them to start something new, to go somewhere else, to be that character. There's so many opportunities here, and it can't all be said in text or even in a voice conversation here. Yes, after 2 months, if you're at 20 members plus still, you're going to have to have awkward conversations. We've minimized that by giving 2 months right now. Okay, it's on, and we're trying to make this clear that it's not kicking people out. Like, you should be building people up around you. And yes, as we've talked about in other community meetings, that involves people eventually leaving your faction, leaving your group, and becoming something new, continuing their story on Doug. I'll end that there.
Yuri's next in queue.
Souls, I'm not sure if you're understanding correctly. Those people can always leave if that's their choice. We're not holding them hostage, but we have to tell them that they can't play with their friends anymore. We're essentially telling them to fuck off.
Which is dramatically reductive, and I've cautioned against even making the point like that. It is your job to build them up. Just because an OOC element is telling you that it's best if they're no longer part of your overall numbers, that does not mean you have to go cold turkey on friendship. Okay, if you feel like you actually are friends with these 18 plus people and they're all contributing to what you're doing on Doug, after 2 months now, it is staff's position that it is worthwhile that you do what we've expected of group leaders and faction leaders to this point, and push them to expand, to be something new, to grow, to on and on. No, it's never our position, and I'm not going to allow our staff's position to be characterized as telling people who've made 15 plus friends over the course of this server existing that they're telling their friends to fuck off. I'll mute again.
Dallas is next in queue.
Yeah, I just wanted to bring this up in light of something we were talking about earlier. Some people saying, just the server in general has been a little bit different with storylines and whatnot. And I think just something to keep in mind with this whole thing is something that I've realized since I started playing this is, the lack of smaller, I guess you can call them groups, solos, people who go out and have their own thing and they play a lot, but they're not necessarily part of a big group. And I think this does get there. To Yuri's point, I do agree with that idea. And coming from someone who's left a group, and I know some people that I play with have all accounts that they have really good experiences on when they've been with, big groups for a while, and you realize that there's a lot out there when you're alone and you can kind of just do whatever you want. I am the leader of my group. It's a really small group, but I think something to think about versus lining everyone up and picking the people that you don't, that making that tough decision in your larger groups. You can also have a larger conversation with everyone and say, hey, is there anyone who is looking to start playing a different way? And you might have takers, you might not, but I just want to throw that out there because me personally, I was with a large group for a long time and I had thought about it for a little bit, having my own story. So there are people out there that I think you'd be surprised. Maybe they will say, yeah, I'll give it a try. But yeah, I just want to throw that out there that there is a lack of people not in large groups right now. So I think it will help with that.
Ryan's next in queue.
So I'll say, like, so in FL we have kind of like a role in our Discord that is, we call it the outrider role. Some groups probably have a similar similar setup, but
Hey,
what? Say what?
can't have the
Outrider
outrider
Caravan
role.
Company.
Oh, okay. Okay. But these are people that are, maybe they're previous members of the group, right? Or they're just people that are kind of around Doug in passing. They may not have like established characters, or maybe they do, but these are people that are welcome to, roll with us at any time. These are people that are welcome to jump in our TeamSpeak and have a chat at any time. And whether they're redshirting or they're just former members, like, we're still friends with them. We can still talk to them. We can still play with them. Now, when it comes to, like, if we have to cut somebody off because of, numbers on the server at any given time, or like running around numbers, then yeah, I mean, that person or those people are usually the first to say, hey, either we don't have enough to split, or we don't want to split, or those are usually the first people to say, hey, you got to go. But I don't see any issues with giving somebody an opportunity like that to say, hey, look, you're welcome to roll with us at any time. You're not a part of the everyday massive stuff because you're not around enough to be involved in that stuff, right? So that, I mean, that's how FL handles it, and I think probably a lot of groups could benefit from something like that if they don't have that sort of setup already.
Go ahead, Santiago.
Man, to be 100% honest, like, I understand. I think it's been said already in the chat. Like, I understand the problem, but I do think that there could have been 100 other better ways to fix this. You guys keep saying that this is for the community, but like, nobody was this wasn't discussed within the community or anything before it was rolled out. It's pretty obvious that there's a pretty huge divide about it. As I said in the chat, I've heard from a lot of people that they're just going to stop playing. Like, I'm just failing to see how this is good for the community. Also, because like, it's like you're telling us that either you have to find more time for Doug and fuck your IRL priorities. Like, you have to either commit or just completely drop it. And that whole thing about like, oh well, you could just go start your own thing, and this, like, not everybody has the organization, not everybody has the time, not everybody has the will to start a whole nother group. Some people just want to be a part of a group and have friends to play with without having to put all of that extra effort of forming their own group and stuff like that. As I mentioned before, there's a lot of gray area here that wasn't considered. You guys are just kind of black and white bringing the hammer down on it. And it just, I don't know, nothing that Solus or anybody else on staff has said about the whole situation feels very community oriented, in my opinion.
I feel the community has brought up a number of things where they feel this will help create the environment we're trying to advocate for right now. They ultimately, I would want to speak on the UK or US split, the time zone split. Say right now, the size of ORCC, our roster itself is about 9 to 8 people. Specifically, we're all over time zones. It's kind of insane. Dante's in Finland. We've got people all over the world. Okay, but one of the gimmicks here is, even if we were split, like say we had the 15 group cap, we could have 8 EU-based players and 7 US-based players. Like, this idea that the time zone split, it's something we're all working on to make sure we can work with our friends better and play better, but it's not juxtaposed against a 15-person limit for a group. The time zones of people involved is not something to look at. Like, if you can, realistically, if you want to entertain both the EU time zone and the US time zone, you'll vary your recruitment and make that about equal. So you'll want to get about equal times of each. Then you have a group that's the entire size of ORCC available to play on that time zone. And then, of course, not all of those 8 are going to be active at any given point. Not all of ORCC is active at any given point. But we're still dramatically We have fun playing the game. We have soft power. We enjoy the gear. We collect. We give it away. We have just time, we have just to find time on the server. And it's not limited by how selective we are with our recruitment in any way here. In addition to that, I would make a separate point that I haven't heard from any other staff members, but I don't think that because of what we're pushing here with the 15-person limit is specifically for server health and kind of leaning towards that. I don't think we would entertain a higher limit for factions or someone who's kind of hit that level. But just like anybody can message us and say, hey, can we use 12 people to raid someone? If you want to run an event with 3 whole groups or with 25 people, simply ask, hey, I'd love to run an event with 25 people. We're going to plan to do this. These 5 are doing this. These 5 are doing this, on and on. And you will not reach resistance from the staff team. We want more events. Just simply communicate with us.
Santiago's next in queue.
I already spoke.
Ah, man, damn. I saw your second queue again. Never mind. Who else? If anyone else would like to say anything else on this. Definitely a very lively topic.
Really quick.
Go ahead.
I'm very glad that Fireflies, Dark Carnival, and other people here who probably haven't voiced their opinion on it entirely. I'm glad you all were able to make the time to come here and voice your concerns in very specific manners as well. I think this will help us reach a better decision if we do feel that there are changes needed to be made. And for instance, if we even feel a need to make an extension in the time frame that's already been given 2 months, if we feel a need to extend that, that might happen. I can't give any guarantees, but again, I'm glad that everybody was able to show up and provide their side, especially like time zones, for instance. That was a great mention. I appreciate that. I hope that we can get back to you sooner rather than later, depending on how our internal discussion goes regarding this.
Go ahead, Eamon.
Yeah, I think like I agree with why the rule is coming in, but like Ryan's saying stuff there in chat about you know, he's saying stuff there about like the Outrider channel with like old members and red shirts, but you know, I brought that point up before, and it was said that that's against the spirit of what the rule's trying to achieve. But so that makes me think it's a bit much to like, you know, if old man Roland pops on TS one day and says, "Hey guys, you know, I've got a bit of time away, I want to jump in," it's like we're a bit like, ooh, you know.
Then you're just going to have to say no to him, unfortunately. And in this case, with the new rule, yes. It's a tough thing to say to somebody, especially an old friend. But at the end of the day, we can't just cater to people that aren't playing. We have to focus on players that are playing, especially consistently. Which it sounds and looks by it, that is the case. And that's something we need to more focus on. And by other people chiming in as well, they have been making the point that they are open and they are looking for people potentially to join them in some form. As well as that, there's also the complaint of, well, these people don't want to do anything for themselves to get established. To me, that just sounds like either you don't deserve to be established then, or find a group that will do it for you. Join a group that will help you.
Desync mentioned it earlier on, and to kind of echo what Dill has just put in the chat, overall we're aiming for server health, and the negative things we've already brought up. Say this isn't to target one group, 2 groups, or even 3 groups. Every group in the future that has the potential to eventually grow to this point, creating these symptoms we're identifying now, is the target of this. There are infinite groups being looked at with this rule. Every group now that has less than 15 is being subjected to the rule, just like groups that are over 15. The approach they have to take to become compliant just is simply different.
Right, anyone else have anything they'd like to add? It's been a very lively discussion, that's for sure. We've just passed the bloody 3-hour mark for the meeting too, so it's gonna be a doozy. Gonna have to encourage people to actually watch this one, especially this section, because I don't think I could even encompass everything that's been said in all my notes I've taken. But anyway, if there's nothing else that people want to say, then that is, I think, the last topic that we need to cover here. Unless there's anything, any public service announcement or anything that staff want to say, or any last minute things that anyone wants to bring up. But I think we're done here. I think. Oh, go ahead, Peter.
I just wanted to chime in my 2 cents that the reason why this server has lasted as long as it has is because of the community and the staff and the admins and everything. Everyone has worked really hard and like promoted stories and such. So in like community meetings and stuff like this, I just want to remind everybody that we're all a part of the same community, and coming in and having an open mind with the discussions like this, and like trying to see both sides rather than just your own is important. I mean, I came in to the last discussion kind of on the fence, but hearing everyone's opinions and seeing everyone's opinions in chat like definitely swayed me in a different direction. So that's just what I wanted to say. Just keep in mind that we're all here trying to make the community better in one way or another. Some decisions might not benefit you in the short term, but in the long term, the server is going to have a lot of benefits from it. So just voice your opinions and make sure that whenever someone else does the same, that you like try to heed like their point of view. But I think everyone's doing a great job. Like we all have the same goal in mind. So
All right. Well, if there's nothing else to be said, then you can all consider yourselves dismissed. Thank you for a lively meeting. Shouldn't be too long until the video is like up there, and I'll get the notes sorted out. I'm probably gonna have to paste it over multiple fucking messages. But
Do you leave
yes.
this part in the video where you hear user left your channel 70 times?
I have every time before I'm going into a meeting, I go into self and I set my sound pack to sounds deactivated. So no.
Genius.
For my own sanity, no.
I should do the same thing.
User has left your channel.